Hello, people. Hello. How are you doing today, everyone? Thank you so much for watching. We've had a bit of a technical difficulty, which is why we've been slightly delayed, but we are here now, and that is the most important thing. So I am joined here by Haris, Sultan, and Sham Sharma. Before we get into the actual discussion, for those of you who may not be familiar with these two, could you, Haris, first introduce yourself, and then Sham, you could follow.
Oh, hi guys. I'm Haris Sultan. I'm an ex-Muslim, Pakistani, atheist, living in Australia. So, yeah, I mean, I criticize Islam, but a lot of people have been somewhat surprised that I'm not found as an anti-Pakistan. As people might have expected. So I think that's what we're talking with my good friend Sham here. So yeah, let's go with that.
And sorry, did you have something that you wanted to also promote as well? Because you've written a book, which I think people need to know about.
Oh, right. Yes. So I have written a book. It's called The Curse of God, Why I Left Islam. And it's a very good book. I think you should buy it. It's available in all your favorite bookstores. It's Amazon. I don't know, wherever you are, might be available in your local bookstore. I don't know about that, but the best way to get it is from thecurseofgod.com or your local Amazon store.
Lovely. Cool. Sham, if you could introduce yourself as well, that'd be fantastic.
Sure, yeah. Hello, everyone. My name's Sham. I'm a Hindu. I live in the United States, and I run a show on YouTube where I talk to the camera and people call me names.
That's probably the best introduction I've heard in a long time.
Can I reintroduce myself now?
Go for it. You know what?
I won't be able to beat it. No, that's okay.
Okay, so guys, we're here gathered today. We're to discuss basically the sort of reaction or outcome, the aftermath of what happened in Pakistan, India on the Kashmir. I don't know, attack or conflict, whatever you want to call it. I mean, even that we can get into. I don't really know how to start this. Could we, before we get into the
let me start it by saying that I'm glad people are here today watching this, because you're in for a momentous occasion where we're going to permanently solve the India-Pakistan problem. And I would also advise people to come and join us next week, because we'll be tackling Israel-Palestine, and we'll just get world peace out of the way.
That's it, guys. So all your UN Security Council should be watching this live stream.
Just let Waleed know and we'll tackle it.
Exactly. So what I'm going to do, because Sham does a lot of videos on this, and what I'll do, Sham, if you could give us a very brief timeline of events from your understanding, and Haris, if you want to either disagree or agree or whatever on his timeline, we can start from there and then we'll go.
So when you're saying timeline of just this recent issue, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So essentially what happened is couple of weeks ago, there was a CRPF, which is like, the paramilitary division of the Indian Army. There was a CRPF truck that was carrying some soldiers from one place in Kashmir to another. And there was a terrorist that basically conducted an ISIS-style terror attack where they took a truck full of explosives and rammed it into the CRPF convoy, and essentially killing everyone on board. And the terrorist then, in a video that was released after the event, of course, took credit for the thing, and he said he belonged to Jaish-e-Mohammed, and Jaish-e-Mohammed also came out and publicly took credit for the attack. And which after that there was obviously a lot of hue and cry about it, rightly so, in India. And what happened as a result of that is the Indian government, so far, the report has been that has been released by the Indian government, that they've carried out an airstrike in Balakot in Pakistan, where there was a large Jaish-e-Mohammed training camp. And in return to that, after I think a couple of days after that, the Pakistani Air Force tried to do something similar, but I don't think that materialized. And in chasing the Pakistani Air Force flights outside of Indian airspace, one of the Indian planes got shot down, and I think a pilot was captured by the Pakistani army. And I think it's important to point out, as the pilot did as well, that he was taken care of quite well, and he was then returned to India, and that's where the situation is right now. A lot of people are saying that there isn't going to be much de-escalation despite all of this, and I would more or less agree with that. I think when we start talking about what can happen in the future, I think we can talk about what forms the next few months could take. But that's up for debate, I reckon.
Haris, does that sound good to you? Or go for it.
I don't disagree with the events that Sham explained at the start. There was a terrorist activity by this guy, something named Dar. He was a local Kashmiri. He did release a video saying that he belonged to JEM, which is Jaish-e-Mohammed, a militant group banned by UNO and also by Pakistan to some extent. But we all know that the operatives of Jaish-e-Mohammed have been operating in Pakistan, and they have a presence in Pakistan under different names, and that's happened previously as well, where an organization has been banned and they spring up again with a different name. So there's no I don't have any doubt or any disagreement with the Indian official policy that Pakistan, there are militants who go inside Kashmir and they carry out their terrorist activities. And historically speaking, and that's what I wrote in my book too. So that's why I have no doubt in my mind when I hear the Pakistani politicians or the generals saying that we've never supported them. That's absolute nonsense. And I think there's a shift in the narrative as well. They are starting to acknowledge that we did support these militants in the late 90s, or sorry, from mid 90s, late 90s, and until and all through the Musharraf's era. So we can go into the breakdown further. So I have no doubt about that there would have been some sort of involvement by Jaish-e-Mohammed. They would have given them, they would have radicalized the person even more. But the couple of problems that I have with this narrative is how much the state of Pakistan was involved in that. To my understanding, it just doesn't make any sense for the state of Pakistan to be involved. But by state, I mean there wouldn't be any official doctrine or policy from the Prime Minister's office or from the Chief of Army Staff's office to bless these kind of attacks. There is no doubt in my mind that there would be people, the lower level generals, they would still have some sort of affiliation and sympathies towards these people. The other key point to note here is, which I genuinely believe is a big factor that majority of Indians do tend to ignore, that there is still a very strong indigenous matter involved in that. This guy was born and raised in Kashmiri, and I don't know how many generations you want to go back. There are cases of human rights abuses which we would recognize, or as UN would recognize as human rights abuses, which can, again, that doesn't give you a reason to take up arms and start killing people. But that can give rise to these kind of people and these kind of sentiments to actually take up arms and then hurt the state as much as you can.
Sorry, Haris.
Okay.
Just because when I was hearing this, I have to admit I'm not the most, what do you want to call it, clued up on these situations. Would a similar situation be something like someone in the UK who is born and bred in the UK, let's say they're Arab or Pakistani, whatever, but they're born and bred, and they watch ISIS videos and they get radicalized, or they watch whatever terrorist videos from a different international source and they get radicalized. Now, we can attribute their radicalization down to ISIS or whoever, but at the end of the day, there's still a British problem. It's still a British problem. It's still a British citizen, and it's their problem. So is that what you're saying? That even though this guy...
Yeah, very similar to that. The only difference is the state of Britain is not actually persecuting the Muslims. I mean, we have this whole... you only have to look at Majid Nawaz's journey when he said there was Paki bashing massively being taken place in the 80s and 90s when he was growing up, and that radicalized him, and that pushed him towards this ISIS narrative or this hardcore militant Islamic narrative. That okay, we have to fight back. Now, this could be very similar in India. Now, unfortunately, India and Pakistan, these are third world countries. Human rights abuses have been quite documented, and these problems have occurred, and the states have not really taken responsibility or done much or done enough to stop those things. And that's why I believe that those people can get radicalized. It's easier to radicalize a Kashmiri, it's easier to radicalize an Afghan than it is to radicalize, let's say, someone who's grown up in Lahore or Mumbai or Karachi, who doesn't go through these social upheavals that these people go through in conflict zones. Very quickly, I wanted to go back to what Sham said in his timeline, that in response to that, India said, the official Indian narrative was, okay, well, Jaish-e-Mohammed is involved, Jaish-e-Mohammed is in Pakistan, and Pakistan is not doing enough to stop these people. And I think that's a very fair point. The problem I have, and the problem a lot of other people would have, is how do you tackle that? We've been shouting. Imran Khan, when he came to power, said, let's sit down, let's talk about it. And I genuinely believe that Imran Khan I genuinely believe that he actually wants to get rid of this problem. It's not only just the Indian problem, it's actually the world is actually closing in on Pakistan. The FRTF has also put Pakistan on grey list, and the finance minister of Pakistan has said, okay, we can't really get investment, we can't grow economically if we have these kind of restrictions, and the world is not buying it. Let's be honest with that. World is not buying that, okay, well, this is just Kashmiri problem, and we have got nothing to do with that. This is absolute bullshit. Pakistan has historically supported these militant wings and has caused a decent amount of terrorism, what we would define as inside Kashmir. So the world is not buying it. So that's why I believe that Imran Khan, and even after 2014, if you remember the Peshawar attack happened, there was a thing called National Action Plan that we have to start controlling these terrorists, because now they're showing their teeth to the Pakistani state as well. So there has been some sort of a movement, but probably this attack has actually put it on a fast track. So there's nothing wrong with that, and I can't deny that. The problem is, how do you solve the solution? If you're going to carry out airstrikes inside Pakistan, that's not going to, get rid of the militants. It's going to unite all Pakistanis, and it's going to bring all the mujahideens and all the jihadists together as well, and that is just going to exacerbate the problem. The second problem is with the actual claim of the India. This is where I see the disingenuousness of the Indian government, and especially the Modi government, that these attacks were actually carried out, and the results that were given to the Indian public, I don't think they're accurate. I don't think there were 300 casualties, whether the Mujahideen or the jihadis or not. There are satellite images have been shared and accepted by New York Times and Reuters, saying that they have taken the satellite images and it doesn't look like those places were hit. I can understand, and that has probably been put forward to answer to the Indian public that, look, this is what happened. We have just to feed the ego of your vote bank. So that's my view on that. As far as the F-16 being shot down, I don't know. It could be true. Again, I don't listen to Indian media as a policy, or I don't listen to Pakistani media as a policy. I only wait for the impartial international media to come forward. And as far as the Balakot strike is concerned, that's my view on that.
Okay, sure. Sham, if you could weigh in on that.
Yeah. So first of all, I mean, impartial international media is a bit of a stretch, in my opinion. I don't think some of the problems that you see in America, some of the problems that you see in Britain over the past 4 or 5 years has been, the British population and the American population in a large way turning on its media, because the media tends to have in these countries, like the BBC, CNN, and a lot of other major news corporations tend to have a very particular bias. So I don't know, first of all, how unbiased or how impartial these outlets really are. But even keeping that aside for a second, let's, whether or not, I understand the point that Haris is trying to make, that, what is, what kind of objective will these strikes or something like this achieve? And I see his point. I definitely see his point. But unfortunately, what has happened, and this in part is India's fault as well. Unfortunately, what has happened is that for such a long time, you have a nation, and again, I think this is something that I should have mentioned right at the outset. is that when I'm talking about Pakistan, when I'm talking about the Pakistani establishment, I'm only talking about the Pakistani government and the Pakistani army. I'm not talking about a regular Pakistani who goes to work, comes home, and tries to put food on his table. I've interacted with the people like that, and when I'm talking about policy and government, I'm not talking about people. So I think that's important to point out. So for a very long time, we have seen a government that has had a policy of destabilizing the region and then saying that, okay, look, we're the only ones that can stabilize the region. And so it enables them to get funding for various, counterterrorism operations. At least that's one of the things that the US has said, that this is something that Pakistan has done for a very long time. And it hasn't really worked out for us. So we're going to stop the funding and so on. And so India has tried many times to try the peaceful route. You have many Indian prime ministers that went and met their Pakistani counterparts, and as a result of that, what India has received has been 4 major wars that have been initiated by Pakistan. What India has received is, a fair amount of terrorism from across the border, and what it's also received is, almost a daily pretty much flow of terrorist attacks in Kashmir. Now, I remember the last time we spoke, Haris didn't really agree with me on that, but you said that there's not really any evidence in mainstream newspapers about daily attacks in Kashmir by terror outfits, and there actually is. If you look at like something like Economic Times, if you look at something like India Today, which are both mainstream newspapers, they show you how, since like they have collated data for like the past 5-6 years. So since like 2013, you can see how terrorist attacks are happening in Kashmir on pretty much a daily basis. In fact, 2017 saw a massive spike in these terror attacks, and most of the people that were apprehended or killed, most of the terrorists, were of Pakistani origin, were not local Kashmiris. So, this is something that India has had to put up with. Now, the problem on India's side has been India has not had a proper policy in place as to how do we deal with it. India has had a very ad hoc policy, like, oh, something happens, okay, we'll deal with it this way. Then something happens, oh, we'll deal with it this way. Then something happens, oh, we'll deal with it this way. And sadly, even with the Modi government, it's been more or less ad hoc. So they said, okay, there was a major terror attack that happened in Uri that was carried out by militants from Jaish-e-Mohammed. So they said, okay, what we're going to do, we're going to conduct this surgical strike. We're going to go strike across the border, destroy some of these terror camps. And then what? And what are you going to do after that? But what happened was, the problem with, I think, some people in the sort of nationalistic circles in India is that they were just happy. Oh, we did surgical strike, humne Pakistan ki eat se eat baja di, and then finish. What happens after? Then you get to, then you do this where you talk to the Pakistani government, then you do this where you try to build international pressure. You do something, you follow through on what you've just done. So I think one big problem with India has been following through. And right now what they're trying to, I believe what the Modi government is trying to show the people is that, look, we're not afraid to follow through on some of the decisions that we take. Now, okay, you did the Balakot strike, great. Now, is it going to be a repeat of the Uri surgical strike, that you do this and then everybody forgets about it? Or are you actually going to follow through and develop a proper policy around it? I think that's what really, really remains to be seen.
Okay, so a couple of questions here. So Haris mentioned that he was not sure on the number 300 people that were. What are your thoughts on that? And secondly, actually, if you answer that question first, then we can get on to the next one.
That's what a lot of media houses in India are reporting. That's what the government sources are reporting, and I'm sure Haris would produce some reports that contradict that. So I genuinely don't really know. I can't pretend to really know what the true answer is to that question.
Okay, and when you said that there were many attacks in Kashmir and they were Pakistanis as opposed to Kashmiris.
Local Kashmiris.
Yeah. So is this something which you believe is a concerted effort by the Pakistani government, or are these Pakistanis on their own will through different terrorist organizations going there, or are the government saying, giving them the green light, go and do what you got to do?
I think there's definitely government support. To what level there is support, I don't know. That's, I think, up for debate. But it's hard for terrorist organizations to operate freely, recruit freely, and carry out attacks freely without having some implicit or explicit support from the establishment.
Okay. Now, when you said that there's no really sort of long-term strategy from India, or there's not really a consistent one, it's sort of like, okay, we'll try this and we'll try that.
Yeah.
What do you think the Modi strategy is? I mean, if you're saying right now that there is no sign of de-escalation, so what's the next step in your mind?
See, that Modi's problem has been very similar, in my opinion. Now, a lot of people like Modi. I like Modi myself, but I think it's completely fair to criticize where you think that the government has gone wrong. And I think the government has gone wrong where they haven't developed a proper strategy around Pakistan. There's been a lot of chest beating, and there's been a lot of sort of, drumming up nationalistic fervor. But what do we do with that fervor? The goal at the end of the day is to stop terrorism coming from Pakistan and stop terrorism in Pakistan, because like Haris said, it's Pakistanis who suffer as well. So what do we do around that? How do we develop a long-term strategy to deal with it, rather than just being like, Pakistan ki eat se eat baja denge, which fine, if you want to do that, that's fine, but at least be consistent about that as well. They're not fully consistent about that either. So pick something and be consistent is what I would say, at the very least.
Okay, Haris, when you heard the some of the reaction or rhetoric, whatever, from the Indian side, saying that we're going to match them, we're going to, take them on, did you think that was the right thing to do? I mean, if your country is attacked, do you feel like you have to do something? Like, do you have to react? Do you have to respond? Or do you just play the patient game? What do you do?
Okay, I kind of agreed with a few things Sham said, but only at the end he just said something that I have to bring up, where he said, okay, chest beating is wrong, which is fair enough. They're creating this nationalistic fervor. That is, okay, what are you going to...
Has he
Did
frozen?
Haris just disappear?
Yeah, he's
looks
frozen.
like it.
So...
Well, good. Then we just talk about the Indian side.
he just said, "What are you gonna do?" And then that's it. Well, that's what you're gonna do, Haris, mate. You're gonna get better internet. Oh, is he back?
We were just talking shit about you, mate.
Well, Haris, mate, what you gonna do, mate? What are you gonna do, mate? Go on, son.
I think, yeah, that's right. Like your video. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
I think the ISI just fixed my connection very quickly, so that's good. I have the ISI support, so that a lot of Indians would be thinking now that I'm an ISI agent. But anyway, so what are you going to do with this nationalistic fervor? When an ordinary person is told about, when this jingoistic and this militarized opinion is formulated, we see what happens amongst the ordinary people. We've seen, I don't know, I've lost count how many people have been beaten up on the streets of, I can't remember what, was it, Sham would probably know which state it was, when the Kashmiri students were beaten up, etc. So this kind of hate actually starts, and that happened in Pakistan as well. They had a casualty of the information minister.
I got to really interject really quick, because the reports of Pakistanis being beaten across the country are largely completely false. Kashmiris, sorry, Kashmiris, my apologies, are largely completely false. There's been, yeah, I know. But there was this one video about in UP somewhere, where this Kashmiri shopkeeper who was trying to sell something was accosted by some people. But if you look at the end of that video, there was people, one of the guys who actually came and stopped the guy works for the BJP. Works for the BJP and came and stopped it. So no. What I'm saying is what is happening is we're looking at one or two incidents, and we're trying to create that Kashmiri students around the country are being targeted, which is not true. In fact, there's a journalist that has specifically looked into this called Swati Goyal Sharma, and she's just written a piece in a newspaper called Swarajya, talking about how that narrative has completely been blown out of proportion.
That's not the point I'm making. That
sure
that Indians will do that. I know that a majority of Indians are outraged by even one incident when they see it, and that's the society we live in, where people are generally outraged. When even the Sharia law supporters, when they see someone getting beheaded by ISIS, they say this is not Islam, even though when it is Islam. So people generally have a tendency of getting outraged whenever they see injustice, whenever they see violence. I'm specifically talking about what happens when you actually create a fervor like that. We had you might have seen the video of that silly Pakistani guy wearing a James Bond kind of suit, holding a gun in his hand and saying, "Yeah, I'm going to the border and going to kick the ass of the Indian military." That's what happens when people's nationalistic sentiments are actually put under the put under the microscope. That they get exaggerated. In the peacetime, they're fine. The information minister of Pakistan said the same thing about Hindus, and he had to pay the price. He was probably speaking from his heart. He probably did believe that Hindus are these disgusting wild creatures, and he made the statements that he made, and then he paid the price, which is good. My point was that when you saying, so what happened with the chest pumping and chest beating and then all this nationalistic fervor, this is one of the symptoms that it can happen. But you just said that, okay, just be consistent with, even if you're going to go in and beat Pakistan, be consistent with that. That cannot happen. I mean, what would it take for this hangover that Indians have, that they can somehow walk all over Pakistan and there's going to be absolutely no repercussion? I don't know if it's true or not. The PM office said that after the capture of the Abhinandan, the pilot, there was a missile attack. We were anticipating a missile attack from India into one of our cities, either Bahawalpur or Karachi, and then we put our missiles in action, and the US satellites actually saw that, and they reported to Indian government that this could escalate very quickly. You throw a missile in Pakistan, and they might do the same. That can happen very quickly. It can get out of hand very quickly. So stop thinking that you can actually go inside Pakistan and you can destroy Pakistan. Now, I agree with the first part of your statement. Something has to happen. That military is not a solution. Anyone who believes that just has absolutely no idea what they're talking about. You'd really think, I've always said it, conventionally, India has a military upper hand. And it is likely that you can take over Lahore, you can take over Karachi, maybe Bahawalpur, you can send in the military. Anytime when you put a military behind the back, when you push them against the wall, they come out with the most lethal weapon, and that's likely to happen. And that's what Pakistan made sure the Indians realized. So what has to happen? Dialogue is the only solution. Now, you also said that to some extent you believe that that Pakistani government might be involved. To what extent, you don't know. I kind of agree with you. There's no doubt that historically they were involved. The top leadership of ISI was involved in funding these militants. And to me, I think the Pakistan had a hangover at that point of losing 1971. Modi on record has said that he actually fought in Mukti Bani to break off Bangladesh. For some reason, I don't feel any. I'm not sympathetic towards Pakistan, because what they did, the human rights abuses that happened in Bangladesh, I am man enough to admit that what they did was wrong, and they had antagonized a huge population of their own country against the Federation of Pakistan, and they had to pay the price. Now, India stepped in and supported those rebels, and they exploited the weakness of their enemy, i.e. Pakistan, and they went ahead with that. Now, Pakistan has been historically trying to do that ever since, to exploit the weakness in Kashmir. They know that there is a separatist element in Kashmir. The people, how many people of Kashmir, we don't know, want to separate. The only way, in my opinion, is to find out the plebiscite. So I think Pakistan has been involved historically. Now I think the narrative might be changing. The daily basis of terror attacks. Look, I mean, I know we spoke about this briefly last time. I am a little bit skeptic that
I'll send you the study.
Okay. So guys, I want to take it one step back.
So can I just answer that really quickly?
Go for it.
So first and foremost, let's just talk about the plebiscite. Now, the plebiscite, first of all, the Indian side initiated the offer of the plebiscite after the instrument of accession was signed by the King of Jammu and Kashmir. That is not binding upon the Indian government. The Indian government put it up. The Indian government could choose to withdraw it. Secondly, in answering the plebiscite as well, in 2019, the plebiscite makes absolutely no sense, because in the 1990s, the Kashmiri Muslim population ethnically cleansed a very large proportion of the Hindu population, pretty much all of it, from Kashmir. So thereby, fundamentally altering the demography of Kashmir, at least the Kashmir Valley. So once you do that, the same old, the plebiscite offer from before doesn't apply like that. So plebiscite offer applies when you're saying that, okay, the same population or the same demographic makeup that we have right now, we're going to apply when the time of the plebiscite comes. That's not going to happen if you ethnically cleanse, 500,000 people. That's just not going to happen. So that's that. Secondly, the other question about Pakistan has been trying to destabilize India ever since 1971 is also not true, because one of the first things that happened after the creation of the state of Pakistan was that the Pakistani government or the army sent in Afghan raiders into Kashmir and tried to take over Kashmir. And then the Indian army had to step in and beat them back. And so it's not that this policy of aggression started in 1971, it started before that. And so it's been going on since 1947, since the creation of Pakistan. And then in 1971, India saw a weakness and then exploited it. So, and for all the 4 wars that have been fought between India and Pakistan, none of them have been initiated by India as well. So when I was making the point to you about Modi saying that, drumming up nationalistic fervor, I don't believe that India is talking about initiating a war. Neither is Modi, because I don't think that has ever been India's policy, and I don't think it will be India's policy, even if there's so much anger against Pakistan, so to say, which has always existed in some shape or form in India. So that's not what I think Modi meant. What Modi meant was that if Pakistan tries to come at us, we can go back at them, which is
fair enough.
Pretty much, that's just how it bloody works on both sides of the border.
Okay, that's fair enough. Now I wanted to briefly touch on plebiscite. I think it was Christine Flair in a book, or I think she forwarded this meme that most Pakistanis have never read the UN resolution, which is somewhat true, because I hadn't read it either until she made that point, and I went back and read it. But she put it as a slam dunk argument that the first step of that resolution is that Pakistan should withdraw from Pakistan occupied Kashmir, and then India should follow suit, and then there should be a plebiscite. I don't see that as if it's like a slam dunk argument that, okay, well, since that's not going to happen, therefore nothing's ever going to happen. Musharraf's and Manmohan Singh even document that was shown afterwards, they had both agreed that we're going to step by step demilitarize both Pakistan occupied Kashmir and Indian occupied Kashmir. Just that. We will talk about plebiscite as some other decade or something, but let's just start doing the. And I kind of agree that even at that point, it probably might not have been a good step, because Pakistan was still sympathetic. The military and the ISI was still sympathetic towards, or were entertaining the idea of maybe militarily taking over Kashmir. So probably that might not have been a good idea, but who knows? With a dictator like Musharraf being at the helm, it might have been possible. So that is not something that Pakistan is never going to consider doing. The other problem, now she says that, is plebiscite could also mean that the Pakistan might have to lose the Pakistan occupied Kashmir as well. That is, again, not that big of an issue in terms of if the plebiscite is taken place and it does say, well, we don't want to be with Pakistan, we want to be neutral, or we want to be independent, so that can happen too. Thirdly, you said the demographic. Now, I was somewhat, I read up a little bit on that, and the most conservative estimates that I found, the most sympathetic
Liberal
statistics that I found, the percentage of Hindus was 23%, and that was reduced to 10%, something like that. But I came across somebody corrected me from Kashmir. He sent me this the census results of 2000, all the way from 1941 till 2011. Now, if I can share my screen, I can probably show it to you. That the consistent population of Hindus and Muslims and Buddhists, in what the chart only shows between Muslims and Hindus, has been more or less remained consistent since 1941 until 2011. I don't know what's happened after that. The population. Hang on, let me show you the screen now. I am actually revisiting even my position on that. Is it even true that or is it, how exaggerated is it that the Hindu pundits were killed off, or they were forced to immigrate from Kashmir. The demographics have been somewhat consistent to what it has been forever. Now, sorry, I'm just trying to share that screen with you.
Sure.
Can you guys see it? Can you guys see it? Now, this is from Indian Express. This is the official census results. Can you guys see it?
Yep, I can see it.
So this is 1941. This is 72% Muslims in 1941, 1951, 68, and you can see the graph there. The only time there was a little bit of an increase was 30% Hindus in 1971. Now, I thought maybe this is just overall Kashmir, and they're trying to do a trick on me. So because we know that the demographics are a little bit different in Jammu and Ladakh. So these are the Ladakh and Jammu figures. The Ladakh has only had 13% Muslims, 8% Hindus, and obviously majority are Buddhists. That's obviously not shown in this. In Jammu region, in the Jammu districts, I don't know how many districts there are.
But that's showing you 2001 and 2011. That's not showing you the 80s and the 90s.
Oh no, sorry.
There.
That's going. Okay, that's fairly recent when we go into the distribution from 2011.
Yeah.
But that's at the district level. So, but the overall level, if you look at it, it still remains the same, isn't it? I mean,
you're looking at overall level because you're looking at, again, the whole of Jammu and Kashmir. You're not looking at the Kashmir Valley and the Kashmir area, because a lot of Kashmiri Hindus, when they were forced out of Kashmir, settled in Jammu.
That could be a fair point. But if you're talking about the whole of Jammu Kashmir, that the demographics have always been this more or less the same. I'm happy to admit, go concede that maybe in the Kashmir Valley they have been pushed out. What does it say? Okay, so there you go. So and that kind of makes sense. In Srinagar, you have 94% Muslims, only 4% Hindus. So that number might have been higher in the earlier decades. Now, the articles that I could find, that the biggest number I think it was in 1941, was that the number was around 21% Hindus in the Kashmir Valley. So even if that's the case, if you do a plebiscite across the entire Jammu and Kashmir, that is not going to have any major impact on the outcome, because you could say that people might have been displaced, and then from Kashmir Valley they might have moved to Jammu, and they might have given them shelter, which is a good thing to do. But the overall,
most of them have moved outside of. So most of the Kashmiri Hindus live outside of Kashmir, like outside of Jammu and Kashmir now. Most of them.
But how come that is not showing that on the overall demographics? That's just my point. I'm not revving up any conspiracy theory.
I know. Like I said again,
genuinely want to understand.
No. I understand that. Like I said again, a lot of the people that moved outside of, that were forced outside of Kashmir, then fled to Jammu, and a lot of them obviously live in Jammu, and some of them live outside. You know, the figure ranges usually from 350,000 to 500,000. And there's some figure here that I was looking at that says 800,000, but I don't think that's true. So basically, after that event, all possibilities of a plebiscite have completely gone out the window. There's not going to be a plebiscite from the Indian side. No matter how much friendship and how much dosti ever occurs, there's never going to be a plebiscite on Kashmir.
Why?
That's solidified.
That's my point. Yeah, but that's my point. Why not? Because
not.
Sorry?
Because it's not going to happen. Because if there's a state where a population of people have been ethnically cleansed for simply being who they are, then there's been a government decision that there's not going to be a plebiscite there.
But we just saw the official statistics. The overall demographics have not changed across the entire state.
No, I understand that, but you're showing me distributions of Hindus and Muslims from 2001 and 2011. You're not showing them to me from the 1980s and the 1990s.
No, I did.
Large percent of the displacement between Hindus and Muslims happened.
Maybe not at the district level, but at the state level, they have remained the same. So no one is asking to have a plebiscite in Kashmir Valley alone. I mean, if any plebiscite ever takes place, that's going to take place across the entire. Well, anyway, this is my view, that this is the only solution that actually makes sense. Alternatively, we can keep our forces there, whatever number of forces there is, and that conflict is not going to go away anywhere soon, even if Pakistan is out of picture.
And look, India's position is they're fine with that. They're fine with not having that solution resolved tomorrow. Because the thing is, this
Or
is
at
not
any
a
time.
solution that's going to resolve tomorrow. This is not going to be a solution that's going to be resolved tomorrow. And a plebiscite is off the table. The plebiscite is not an option. From the Indian side, I don't believe a plebiscite is an option. And I fully agree with that. So now we need to look at what can we really do.
So very quickly, I want to ask you the question. So very quickly, so you think people don't have a right to determine now, especially when we know what happened?
People do have a right to. But tomorrow, if somebody, but that's almost like saying, but in the United States, there's always like people that come up and they say, oh no, I'm a sovereign citizen. I'm my own country now, and a city of people can decide that I'm a new country. You can't just let that. You can't just let that happen.
No, but
in
under
Bihar, where I'm from originally, if tomorrow a locality says that I want to be a separate country, that's not how democracy works necessarily. It might not be the most perfect way, but that's not how it can work.
It actually works that way, because one person could say that's why we hold a plebiscite if the majority of people say that or not. We've had that happen in Quebec. We've had that happen in Scotland, and that's what happens in civilized countries. Now, it's not going to happen in Balochistan because it's a third world country. It's not going to happen in India because it is a third world country with no respect for human rights. So that's my take on that. And when you said that, if someone says that, if someone gets up in Minnesota and says, "Hey, I want a separate state of Minnesota, independent of the United States," if there is a majority of people and there's an armed movement and the conflict is going on for 70 years, something is going to happen. They're not going to say, "Well, screw you."
But again, like I said, the way this whole thing happened was that states had to decide in 1947 whether or not they were going to join a country. The King of Jammu and Kashmir signed the Instrument of Accession, thereby making Kashmir an integral part of India. And so we can't go around walking back that decision all the time.
So the kings have to decide where they're going to go. And again, you keep saying that as if it happened 70 years ago. 70 years ago, whatever happened. Do you want to live in 70 years for the next 2,000 years or something? I mean, the borders change, people's minds change, people's views change, religions come and go, countries come and go, and to say that, well, that's what they gave it to me, so I'm going to hold on to it, and I'm not going to regard anything. You know you don't have any moral superiority claim.
I'm not looking for moral superiority. I'm just saying that there's a legal precedent to it. There's a fully legal case to it. A plebiscite was offered only by the Indian side on good faith, and so it is not binding on them to keep hold of it at all. The Instrument of Accession was signed by the King of Jammu and Kashmir, and that is how that was decided. And it's literally as simple as that.
And might I add, that offer of plebiscite, when UN jumped in, that became the condition for a ceasefire as well. So that seems like, okay, well, we'll give you something, we'll dangle a carrot, but then when we just walk away from it. Regardless of what happens,
let's not get things mixed up here. Let's not make a flippant comment like India does not have regards for human rights, and let's just walk away.
No, human rights.
Especially coming from a Let's be very clear about who we're talking about here.
I didn't build my case on human rights at this point. Although I have some reports from Amnesty International as well. But in this case, I was talking specifically about making a claim that, okay, we will hold a plebiscite, let's do a ceasefire, and then when the ceasefire happened, let's get on with it. That's the only point that I'm talking about. My point on that is the plebiscite is the only realistic solution that we can think of. You can say all you want that the Kashmiri Pandits have been massacred, and I totally buy that argument that it might have happened in Kashmir Valley. And I was actually thinking that those Kashmiris were resettled in mainland India, not in Kashmir, those Kashmiri Hindus. But that census has totally changed my view on that, and someone sent me that. And I can't find any other reasonable explanation than how come the demographics have remained consistently same. Might not have remained the same in Kashmir Valley and Ladakh, and Jammu, but they have overall remained consistently the same. And even if there was 23% in Kashmir Valley, that still would not have made any difference in the outcome of plebiscite. If we assume that all the Muslims are going to say we're going to go with either Pakistan or be independent Kashmir, and all the Hindus say, well, we're going to be a part of India. So even if we assume that, which is a big assumption, this is why we would never know until a plebiscite happens. That's my view on that, and I think that kind of makes sense. And I hope anyone who's listening, they can make up their own mind that should we give the right to people to decide whether they want to be or not, or we should send our forces in Scotland and tell them, and no, screw you, you're a part of United Kingdom.
What?
Okay.
What?
I just changed Kashmir with Scotland, and
yeah, I know, but where is the instrument of accession for Scotland? Like, I don't understand.
It has been a part of UK. It doesn't have to be an instrument of accession only for a country to be a part of something. I mean,
but the way the Indian and Pakistani partition took place is not similar to the situation between Scotland and England. The way the Indian and Pakistani partition took place was there were certain legal grounds that were agreed by both sides that, okay, the kings of these or the rulers of these principalities get to decide which country they want to go with, and they made the decision, and that's how the countries are today, and that's the case that I'm making.
Are you sure? Are you sure about that? Because I thought the main conditions were the actual elections of 1943, were they, or something, that actually kind of determined which countries are have which religious majority, and that they would go to that part.
They did, but that's what I'm telling. They did, and that's how the countries were initially divided, right? But then after that, the British did give each country and each principality the option to be able to join the country that they choose, and that is what happened in a lot of cases. You had in Bangladesh, you had Silchar, not Silchar, but the northern Bangladesh area that was part of the Kingdom of Cooch Behar, but the king of that area opted to join Pakistan, and they went with Bangladesh.
Okay. I still don't think that we should live in the principles decided by the politicians of the 40s. We live in a different world. In my view, people should be able to determine however they want to be, especially after the conflict has gone on for so long and there's been so many violent casualties. That's all I have to say on that.
Okay, cool. So guys, I just want to maybe take one step back, because I've heard a lot of criticism, maybe from the sort of Pakistani side or even the Muslim side, that the conditions that the Muslims Kashmiris are living in kind of create that sort of environment for radicalization to happen. Of course, the other side may take advantage of that, but this is one accusation that I've heard many times. I don't know who wants to go first to address this. Sham, do you want to say, is this true, not true, and to what extent?
I think there is some truth to that. I mean, you have a state where there's a constant military presence, for good reason, I might add, but there's a constant military presence. And you have a population that is not necessarily as well educated or as well employed as the rest of the nation necessarily, even though there are poorer areas of the country than Kashmir. The state that I come from, Bihar, is one of those states. It's one of the least educated states in the country. It's one of the poorest states in the country, Bihar. So Kashmir is not even lowest on that list. But what happens is that, unfortunately, the leadership of the Kashmiri people has also let them down, particularly the Hurriyat, where you look at the leaders of the Hurriyat and you look at the lifestyles that they live. You know, all they're rich as anything. Their kids study abroad and all of that, and all they tell Kashmiris to do is go fight go throw stones in the street. And if the Kashmiri leaders can also encourage them, okay, you want to create a dialogue, you want to create a better case for yourself, try to get involved a little bit more in the mainstream, try to get a little bit more educated. And I'm not saying this is just a one-way street. Again, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is there needs to be a two-way street on this. This cannot, because if you look at the amount of government funds that the state of Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir gets compared to a state like Uttar Pradesh, compared to a state like Bihar, it gets an inordinately large amount of government funding and government support than the state of UP and Bihar. So it's not like the state is completely disinterested in taking care or ensuring that the Kashmiri people have better lives. But it's got to be a two-way street, in my opinion. And the leadership of the Kashmiri people is not the right leadership, in my opinion.
Sorry, so before you jump in, because I was hearing that one of the terrorists that carried out the attack, he himself was maybe abused or assaulted by one of a police officer or an army, I can't remember exactly, a police officer in Kashmir, and that was a pivotal moment in his radicalization that actually led him to.
Right. So is the narrative that's been built. But his dad actually was on the news a couple of days after the attack, and he said, and he openly admitted that his son was, he was radicalized much before this incident apparently occurred, and he used to go throw stones at the army officers, and he used to always say, "My goal is to take out one of them." This is his father on national TV, telling this openly about his son. So I understand. I'm not saying that, the Indian army is completely blameless. I'm not saying that, but it is a two-way street. And I think it's important to understand the other side as well, is that why are Kashmiris completely, so reluctant to try and avail of the resources that the government's trying to give them, and I believe that the blame does not lie with the ordinary Kashmiris, but the leadership of the Kashmiri people, particularly the Hurriyat.
One last question before I give it over to Haris. I mean, from your understanding, are the Kashmiris saying we want to be part of Pakistan or we want to be independent? What's this general tone? Is it we're pro-Pakistani or we're just anti both of you? Sorry, that's a question for you, Sham.
Oh, for me?
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Right. A lot of the protests that you see that happen, the large-scale protests that happen in Kashmir, you see a lot of Pakistani flags there. So if they're trying to tell you that we want to be an independent country, then that message is clearly not getting through if you're waving Pakistani flags at the army. So,
or has the Pakistani flag become sort of a sign of protest, like an FU, like a middle finger kind of thing?
Possibly.
Because they know it probably pisses them off. So there's
no, possibly. But again, it's not going to give you a very clear message if you're trying to say that we want to be an independent country, if you're waving the flag of Pakistan.
Okay, sure. Haris, more than happy to jump in and talk about certain environments or conditions or lack of leadership that has created in the sort of right type of atmosphere for someone to be radicalized in Kashmir.
What is the name of that Pupo Kashmir? What's the name that woman who was just interviewed in Aapki Adalat? The Kashmiri woman. Do you know Sham? What's her name? She was the CM of Kashmir at one point.
Mufti.
The woman, Mufti something. What's the name?
Yeah, Mehbooba Mufti.
Yeah, Mehbooba Mufti. That's it. I am somewhat really shocked because I also went through a stage where I had the epiphany that whatever bullshit that I've been sold by the Pakistan media or the Pakistan ISI, it must be all bullshit, because as a matter of my policy, I always believe that the truth is somewhere in the middle. When I hear something from Pakistan and I go, oh, it's just, yeah. And I was having a conversation with my mom yesterday, and although I had thought that I had made her quite open, but when it came to all these Balakot claims and F-16 and all that, and she was just 100% full-on pro-Pakistani narrative. And I said, well, that's just not the right way of looking at it, because it just can't be the same way. So when I looked into these leaders, Farooq Abdullah and Mehbooba Mufti and all that, I've noticed a shift in their game as well. I mean, for a very long time, they were pro-India, pro-democracy, pro-elections. They were chief ministers. They were a part of these are the educated leadership that you're talking about. Now I'm seeing that they are becoming more and more antagonistic towards the Indian establishment, so to speak. The Kashmir being the Atut Ang, the unbreakable part, which is fine. Any country, no country donates pieces of land. It just doesn't happen, even in the civilized world, that is with UK and Canada, etc. There would be still a desire for these countries to have to keep these people united. But as I said, there has to be a cutoff point at some point when it gets out of control. Veedu asked whether the Kashmiris want to be with India or Pakistan or independent. And I noticed you couldn't answer that question because we don't know that. We have Pakistani media or the establishment or agencies telling us that they want to be with Pakistan. We have a lot of Indians tell us that they want to be with India. And this is why I keep going back to the plebiscite, where we have to have, or maybe just carry out some sort of poll, just for your own understanding what is happening. Is it the financial grievances? Is it the education, or whatever the reason are? And just for your own growth, maybe try to understand. Or maybe Indian agencies probably have conducted that poll. I don't know.
Well, the thing is, it's simple, right? Because in the 90s, the Kashmiri population made it pretty clear what their grievance was, and their grievance was they do not want to live with Hindus. And the reason I say that is because there's an area in Kerala, which is one of the southernmost states of India, where there's a large Muslim population, and recently they lobbied the government to create a separate sort of district for them called Mallapuram. And they said, no, here Muslims are in majority, so we want to have our own district where we want to vote a certain way. We want to elect only Muslim leaders, and so on and so forth. This is happening in Tamil Nadu. This is happening in other parts of. This is happening in Hyderabad. In Andhra Pradesh. And so you have movements where Muslims become a certain amount of the population, and they say, all right, now we don't want to coexist. So what do you do in that situation?
Yeah, I am extremely sympathetic towards that, and this is why I have major problems with Islam, that it creates these divisions unnecessarily, and it divides people unnecessarily. And how far is it going to go? And someone, my good friend Kushal, I don't know whether he told me on record or off the record, that even if India legitimately tried to find the solution to Kashmir, that's not going to be the end of it. There's going to be there's almost another 200 million Muslims in Pakistan, and then are we going to keep breaking India into tiny parts? And no country would even think of doing that. That is just absolutely crazy, especially when India is performing so well. India is becoming a growing economy. When I've always believed that when you increase the when you improve people's lifestyles, they tend to become less religious. They tend to become less nationalistic. They get busier with improving their lifestyles and worrying about which dress they should wear on the next cousin's birthday party. These are the things that people get busy with, and we should allow that. We should wait for that to happen. And I'm totally sympathetic with India on that part. My problem again with Kashmir part is this violence, is it or is it not getting out of hand? Or is it fair to put all the blame on Pakistan, which is a good thing that you have managed somewhat. If you want to give credit to India, I would say that a big part of the credit does go to India, whether that diplomatic pressure is obviously more, and economic pressure is obviously more effective than just having a strike on Balakot. That the FRTP, what is it called?
FATF, yeah, FATF.
That discussion had already started 3 months before that, when Imran Khan recently had just come to power, and then he was talking about we have to get out of that, and the world is not buying the terrorist narrative. So you want to call that maybe India would have played a massive part in convincing the international community that this is what Pakistan is doing, so stop it. So Pakistan is probably, I genuinely believe that they are changing. Now, if they do change, what is going to happen after that? Let's hope that the Kashmiris, this separatist movement starts dying out. Maybe let's hope that happens. And I think this is probably what we're going to see. And if the hearts and minds of Kashmiri people, they say, well, okay, we're getting, our economy is growing, we're getting new hospitals, we're getting state-of-the-art schools and universities, why should we become separate? I genuinely believe if Kashmir, for some reason, the wildest imagination, if Kashmir did become an independent state, that would be a pretty hostile state. Someone from Kashmir told me himself that half of the Kashmiris probably would want some sort of a Sharia law. The other half would be quite liberal. Probably they would already by default be more pro-Indian anyway, because a lot of part that Pakistan hasn't become Sharia law because there's still Indianness in Pakistan, as not as much Arabness in Pakistan. So that could be a cesspool of violence or another hostile little state. It would be, of course, little. It would never have any legitimate threat on the security of either of the two countries. But let's just hope that. And that's why my problem. If India wants to ride it out, I think maybe India should have that right to do it. But the only
sorry, that's the point I was going to make. But yeah, carry on. Sorry, go ahead.
But the only part where I'm skeptical is that 70 years have gone past, and the Pakistan has the same problem, which just defies my common sense. That if you know that this is a problematic area where these people might demand a separate state, shouldn't you be pumping in money more in those states? Balochistan has the same problem. It's one of the most impoverished states and one of the natural, in terms of natural resources, is the richest state in Pakistan. And then they haven't done anything. Musharraf has tried to do something. Now they're trying with China cooperation with that belt, etc. They're trying to do it now to just buy the people. But these are things they should have done 70 years ago. That okay, well, this is a problematic. Okay, whatever. And India has been growing since the late 90s. It's been almost 20 years. It's been growing. They should have been pumping more money in just to buy into it. Let's hope that in all this starts happening 20 years later, Pakistan. But my point is Pakistan having a good self-reflection. I think the ball is in India's court. That what are you going to do with that once you do manage to achieve some sort of non-militant activity in India, in Kashmir? Would India be prepared to just try to change the hearts and minds of people rather than, having all these human rights claims that we said?
I think not all of them are claims. I think that there would be a lie on my part to say, all of it is a claim.
Oh, no. I agree that.
Yeah. Because I don't think they're spotless, because the Indian army is people just like everyone else. So they make mistakes. Sometimes they go overboard, and that probably happens. I'm not going to dispute that. But I think what India's, I believe, trying to do is India's policy has been that what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and develop economically. We're going to try and develop economically, and the goal with economic development is to take everybody with them. And one of the things that Modi has done, which I really appreciate, is that when he came in, one of the first things he said was, my goal is sabka saath, sabka vikas, which means everyone develops together. So if you look at whatever you think of Modi as a person or as a leader, but if you look at the policy changes he has brought about on the ground, they're very encouraging, in the sense that the programs he has passed for public health, like he's trying to create an NHS-like scheme that exists in Britain, in India. Like he's trying to cover literally every vulnerable Indian. It's called Ayushman Bharat, and he's trying to cover them under that. He's trying to bring in the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, where he's trying to educate every Indian that is not educated so far. He has passed a program where he's trying to give LPG connections to the poorest households in the country, because a lot of the poor households, they still use wood and coal to burn fires and cook food in their house, and they get that smoke poisoning, and a lot of them die because of that. So he's saying, get away from that, take this LPG and cook your food on LPG. He's passed like the Mudra scheme, which helps small and tiny enterprises get funding, and Jan Dhan Yojana, which is about financial inclusion, which is trying to get the poorest population of the country into the financial mainstream. And so in all of these programs, and there's more, and in all of these programs, nowhere is there any sort of a difference between Hindus, Muslims. It only talks about the economically backward sections of the country. So I think that's what the Indian government is trying to do, is that they're trying to develop everyone economically. I think that's a great step. And at the same time, I think what the Indian government needs to push for, which I feel like will come at a later date once India becomes a firmly middle-income country, because it's on its way right now. It's not there yet. But when India firmly becomes a middle-income country, then you will see a de-radicalization among the Muslim population in India automatically, to a certain extent. But I feel like India needs to start laying the ground for de-Islamization of the Muslim population in India. That's not to say that, okay, you cannot practice your religion anymore, but that's just to say that move them away from basically slowest de-Islamization is what I would say. Because sorry, go ahead.
No, so I just want to ask a couple more questions on the actual Pulwama thing. Is how did the Indian side receive Imran Khan's management of the whole situation? So was it received positively or not? From what I can tell, it wasn't.
There's too many memes. Yeah.
So I mean, was it seen as something like he did something good? He gave back the soldier without any conditions attached, or was it seen in a completely different light?
The thing is, with Imran, with the return of the soldier, the problem happened, I think, from Pakistan's end, that the soldier was filmed on camera. When he was captured, he was filmed being beaten by by people, not by the army, but he was seen beaten by the people. He was seen captured by the army. Then he was seen filmed by the army on 2 or 3 separate occasions. Once in the jeep, once in an army base in Pakistan. So after that, you if you do not return the soldier, then you'll have a lot of international pressure build up on you, that what's going on, why is the soldier still in your custody. So you can still make the case, oh, that he's a spy, he's a POW, and we have the right to keep him. And then if you declare him a POW, then the Geneva Conventions come in. So I feel like Imran Khan in that situation did not have too mani options to play in terms of, okay, we're going to keep this guy indefinitely. So he had to return it. I feel like that would have happened even if a Pakistani soldier crashed on Indian soil as well. The Indian government wouldn't have much choice but to return him.
And sorry, 1 second. Just how was his comments received in India when he's saying, "I'm having this tea, which is lovely. Say what you want. The tea is pretty good."
Well,
and
obviously pretty well, because people were quite proud of him, that he's he's holding his nerve while he's there. But by all accounts, and by his personal accounts, he was treated well by the Pakistani army. So I think that he made a point to come out and say that the army behaved with me very professionally. I can't speak the same of the civilians, but the army was thoroughly professional.
Right. Haris, how was the tea?
Yeah. I hope it was a Kashmiri tea.
Yeah, exactly.
The only time when I want to have a tea is that Kashmiri tea. See, this is where I think Indian media really loses the plot. Where I've seen a negative turn in Pakistan media immediately after the Imran Khan speech. It was fairly balanced. We've always had a couple of clowns like Zaid Ahmed and that Oreo biscuit, the Oreo Makbul Jan, and a couple of other ones who just made these outlandish claims. But the big ones like Rauf Kalasra, the Kashif Abbasis, the Kamran Shahids, and all the big ones, the mainstream ones that were pulling the most, the biggest ratings, were fairly responsible. But then we have the mainstream India on the other hand, and like it's just Pakistan dar gaya, Pakistan ye ho gaya, Pakistan Imran Khan ki.
Yeah.
They were literally saying that Imran Khan ki, like his ass was busted. It just, what it happened.
It doesn't help. It doesn't help.
Even I'm a pretty balanced guy, and even when I look at it, I go, "Fuck you," Fuck you. Maybe you should cancel it or whatever. To hell with it. Deal with it. I would never, of course, go that far. But I can imagine that guy who held a gun and he said, "I'm going to the border." There are millions of people like him who would be getting absolutely mortified, and they would have been saying, "Fuck you. Fuck you." We're just let's have a nuclear war. It just doesn't.
I agree with you on the sense that the Indian media is the absolute worst. I completely agree with you there. There's no argument from me. I have for a very long time maintained that the Indian media is the absolute pits of the Indian population. So there's no argument from me there. But when it comes to like some guy grabbing a gun and going to attack India, that's going to happen regardless. That's going to happen whether or not the Indian media exists. You might say there'll be 2 extra people on the holding the gun, but it's going to happen regardless, and that's where.
I'd say a lot more than 2.
Yeah, but it's going to happen regardless, as long as because look, in terms of when we're talking about like how a Pakistani learns about Hindus and how a Hindu learns about Pakistanis, they're 2 very different things. In our textbooks, we're not taught that Muslims are the scum of the earth. They're the worst kind of people. Be very, very, wary of them. In fact, I would say still that in India there is. It's not institutionalized, that anti-Hindu sentiment or that anti-Muslim sentiment in India. It exists in certain quarters undeniably, but it is not institutionalized. I would say it is actually the opposite, because if you look at Article 30 of the Indian Constitution, in Article 30 of the Indian Constitution, religious minorities and cultural minorities are actually allowed to maintain religious institutions, maintain cultural and linguistic institutions on their own, and the government gives them support, financial and other support for it. Hindus don't get that. So that is why you have many Hindu communities, whereas the Hare Krishna, the Ramakrishna Mission, the Lingayats, they're angry and they have no choice. If they want to maintain their own linguistic or educational institutions, they have to go out and say, okay, we declare ourselves as not Hindu. Please give us that benefit now. So, so there's two very different paradigms when it comes to how people deal with the other, so to say.
I absolutely agree with you, and it's been. This is something that I realized, obviously, when I came to the Western world, and I realized the true importance of the secular constitution and the secular nature of the Indian public, and also the secular constitution. I've said it numerous times, is the greatest piece of document in that part of the world, maybe if not the world. We know that we're dealing with really maybe not so educated population. People have all types of problems. Therefore, those people may not be 100% secular, and that's why you would see these occasional cases of people beating each other up or killing each other for eating cow meat and vice versa or whatever, and Muslims throwing slurs like "you cow, urine drinkers," etc. So because we're dealing with very uneducated people, but the India of Nehru, the India of Gandhiji, the secular constitution, it is something to envy. But there's a legitimate fear. Now, I am hopeful that Pakistan is to some extent changing. This was the first time when Imran Khan, people often forget that in Punjab, the biggest and most important part of the province of Pakistan, his government, Imran Khan's government, it only has a very razor-thin majority. And he just sacked one of his interior ministers just for making those stupid claims, or as if he's some troll on YouTube where he could get away with that. It has never happened like this. No one, things like this have been ignored, and I'm not going to be apologist, and I'm not going to say, well, all of a sudden minorities in Pakistan are great. I'm a fucking minority. I would be the first person to be killed by a mob, if not arrested by the police and put in a cell. But I have legitimate hopes that it is changing. We cannot judge Pakistan in the light of the 70s or 60s or the 80s or even early noughts.
And look, don't get me wrong. It is in my country's better interest that Pakistan changes.
Yeah. So my finishing point and then my concluding point is that it is changing. Hopefully, it keeps changing. But I am somewhat a little bit pessimistic about India, that under Modi Sarkar, I have been saying it for a good couple of years or something, and this nationalistic fervor that is increasing, it doesn't seem to me the India of Nehru or the India of Gandhiji, the secular India. There's this Hindutva people. I don't know if you've seen any of my videos. I have a favorite, this Muslim guy who's with a beard. I think he's Kashmiri. Someone told me he's shouting like I always have Muslim shrieks and shout. I have found very similar photos now in the recent years from Hindutva people, where they're shouting and it just looks like, whoa, who are these barbarians? My concern is are we going, someone actually drew an analogy, I think Shashi Tharoor, it was, no, maybe not Shashi Tharoor, it was someone else, he was a Congressier though. He was saying that is Modi taking India where Zia-ul Haq took Pakistan? This Islamization, radicalization of Pakistan happened majorly in Zia's time, and we've been trying to de-radicalize it ever since. And I think Imran Khan might be the guy. Let's hope, fingers crossed. But my concern is Modi, I know you're a BJP supporter, is Modi going too far with this nationalistic, this jingoism, and this... Kushal says that this is kind of like this is the Hindu hangover, that they've been hard done by the Western forces for 1,000 years, and now this is a rising India, this is a strong India, an economic power, and fuck you town now. It's like, we're going to get you now. It's our time. Don't you think it's a very thin balance? Don't you think it's going too far?
No, I don't think so. And you can say that about, I think there's a point to be made among sections of the BJP, which is why I am not a BJP supporter, but I support Modi. Like I don't think I support BJP particularly because I don't think BJP really has done enough for they say we're the Hindu party, but I doubt that the BJP has done enough for Hindus, if I'm being completely honest. And they talk a big game. They always talk a big game, the BJP, that we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to show Pakistan, we're going to build a temple, we're going to but they don't do anything. Yeah, but they don't do it. You know what I mean? There's a lot of talk, but there's not a lot of action backing the top, which is why my support for the BJP is very highly conditional. I like Modi because this is not a guy that has ever come out and openly spoken up against a community ever since he's been elected to the prime ministership in 2014.
What happened in Gujarat?
What happened in Gujarat?
Yeah, well, yeah, I know. I've heard all types of stories, and I also know that the State Department of US had actually banned him from entering.
That's right.
Could have been exaggerated.
But it was the Supreme Court of India which instituted a special investigative team, and the Congress government, which was in opposition to Modi, by the way, instituted a special investigative team under a Supreme Court judge, and they found that Modi was not involved in the violence at all, and two, that Modi did all he could to gather the forces and stop the riots at the perfect opportunity. Now, this is a special investigative team report backed by the Supreme Court of India. Now, it is up to the people to decide whether or not they believe the Supreme Court of India.
No, I would respect the Supreme Court. I look, again, as I said, these kind of charges are always exaggerated. I don't know about the nitty-gritty of that. I haven't read the report, but if Supreme Court of India did find him innocent, then I'm not anyone to say otherwise.
Yeah, and since in 2014, sorry, go ahead.
Having said that, the point you made that he hasn't done enough in terms of Mandir Wahim Banega, etc., which I can understand that because he is he's not a dictator. He does live in a democracy where there can be different opinions, so he can't just give an order and then that's going to happen. But my point is, why even say those kind of things, knowing especially that this is a highly charged up religious society, very conservative society, where one statement you say
Mandir Wahi Banega?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Well, because
I know there would be history behind it.
No, I'll tell you why. Because under Islamic rule, thousands of Indian temples have been destroyed, desecrated, and one of the places in Ayodhya where the mandir is, people want the mandir to be built. It is one of the most sacred places for Hindus because it is considered to be the birthplace of Lord Ram, and it is considered to be one of the most sacred places for Hindus. And since 1850, this is something that a lot of people don't mention, that since 1850, that mosque has been operating as a temple. Like, people have been going to the mosque and praying on the outside, on the outskirts of the mosque. They've installed a little Ram statue and they pray there. And the mosque is not used by Muslims in Ayodhya either. And so it is basically righting a historical wrong. No. I'll tell you why. Because it is basically fixing a historical wrong. Because that temple, there used to be a Ram temple that used to stand on the place where the Babri Masjid stood. And that temple was, again, it has been recorded numerous times that temple was a very sacred temple for the Hindus of North India. And that temple was destroyed by the armies of Babur just to spite the Hindus. And just to show, oh, this is your sacred place, all right, I'll break it. And so after that, the mosque hasn't even been in proper use. So Hindus are just saying that, hey, you've destroyed thousands and thousands of temples in the last 800 years. Why can't we have one back? Why is that such a crazy thing to ask for?
But is it only going to be one then? Like,
yeah. Do you see people asking for temples all around the country? No, they're not.
But I don't see other states having an aggressive separatist movement as Kashmir either. But it's
look at Kerala. Yeah, look at Kerala.
But they're still happy to stay within the Indian Federation. But my point is, that's a legitimate fear on the part of India that it could escalate and there could be all these other dying separatist movements could actually come to surface again. But don't you think that would be antagonizing? However wrong, you know what my views are on Islam. Don't you think that is just going to antagonize it further, and it's gonna cause further division and problems and the Hindu-Muslim tension? Do you think that it is absolutely necessary for it to happen?
Yes.
Or for someone or for a political party to take that stance and then expect his opposition's rivals not to take advantage of it and not to escalate it even further?
Because it is not even, it is not even a polarizing issue. In fact, there are Muslims within India. In fact, one of the Muslims that excavated the site in Ayodhya, one of the people, that excavated the site from the Archaeological Survey of India, that excavated it, was a Muslim named K.K. Muhammad from Tamil Nadu. He saw that there were remains of a Hindu temple, of a grand Hindu temple, under the Babri Masjid, and Babri Masjid actually used stones from that older temple to build the current masjid. And he said, well, if there's a temple before that, and if the Hindus really want it, what's the problem? I think Muslims should give that up. The Shia Waqf Board of Uttar Pradesh has come out openly and said that, yeah, I think the Hindus should have the temple back. It's only fair.
It's the same argument with the indigenous populations of Australia, indigenous populations of America. Okay, we were here before, so pack up and leave, or whatever. Or I know you're not going to that extreme, but implementing or righting a wrong that was 1,000 years ago or 700 years ago, I just don't think it's worth it, because we know that how much tension that could rise, that could escalate, and is it worth taking a risk to?
It won't rise tensions, because it's not going to raise tensions between a normal Hindu and a normal Muslim, because they don't care. It's the politicians that are going to drum it up, and they're going to be like, oh, look, Musalman, tumhare saath kya ho raha hai? That's what's going to happen. General Muslims on the street don't really care, but it only happens when it's like election season, and then they say, oh, Musalmano, apna right mat chodo, and this and that. And again, it's very important to understand that we're not asking ki jahan pe bhi masjid dekho wahan pe mandir bana do. This is a genuinely ancient, very, very sacred site for Hindus. It's
how
one of the most sacred site. What's that?
How old is this mosque now?
The structure is about 700 years old, 500 years old, and the temple that existed there before. It existed there from the 8th century AD.
Yeah, I know, but you can't get that back. But this is 700-year-old piece of building. That should be treated as heritage itself.
Nope. Why?
700 years old.
What about the heritage of the people that exist there?
But it's gone. But but it's
gone.
But
what do you mean it's gone? Like it's basically like saying tomorrow, if somebody destroys Mecca, shouldn't Muslims have the right to rebuild it?
No, but there's no. It's not 1,000 years have gone. It's not like another religion has taken over, and now the Muslims are coming back.
It hasn't taken over.
No, but it has. You're saying there's a mosque. But you're saying there's a mosque on top of it, which is 800 years old. Anyway, I just can't understand religion. That's probably why. I mean,
it's not even a question of religion. It's just a question of the indigenous people of a country just being able to rebuild a very important piece of their heritage.
But
that's a horrible thing.
No, but those Muslims are
no, it's not. It's not even a functioning mosque. It's not. But I'm saying a functioning mosque.
Sorry, guys.
How is that an important?
One at a time.
Okay. Well, I think I'm done. on that point.
Yeah, it's not like we're saying ki arey Ajmer ki dargah ko jaake todo aur wahan pe mandir banao. No, we're not saying that. Ajmer ki dargah was also, like for example the Qutub Minar. The Qutub Minar was built after the destruction of 26 temple complexes. But nobody's going and saying ki Qutub Minar ko tod do jaake, or India Gate ko tod do jaake, Gateway of India ko tod do jaake. People are saying this is a spot that is very sacred for Hindus. Let us just build the temple there. I don't think that is such a egregious claim. What?
Can't you build next to it and keep the same mosque as well? So there has to be right on it.
Same because why was that mosque created? Why was that mosque created?
But
the mosque was not created to create a place of worship or of some some spiritual reason. The mosque was created. Is this the place that Hindus like? All right, destroy it. That's why the mosque was created.
Yeah, but we can't right the historical wrongs 800 years later because
we can.
Yeah, we pretty much can. Okay, well, good luck.
Okay, guys. Okay. I think that's I think we've exhausted all possible sort of points on that. But one thing I do want to talk about is actually I don't know if I should stoke this conversation. This so how do you pronounce it? Ayodhya.
Yeah.
I don't know if I should You know what? I'm going to ask this question. If you want to answer it, you can, and then we can move on from that. Should the people who want this heritage to be rebuilt be held ransom by a minority of Muslims? Because remember, we're not assuming every Muslim, but oh my God, I can't believe you. I don't think they even possibly care. Like Sham said, it's not even a functioning mosque. But should they be allowed to be held ransom by the fringes and say, well, we don't want those guys to react, therefore we won't build this? Now, whether you right or wrong or not is irrelevant. If they want to build a temple there, should they be allowed to, and should they not build it because some guys might be extreme? Anyone can pick that up if you want to. If not, we can move on.
I mean, that's the point that I was making, basically. So yeah, I mean, I would say to that, yeah. I mean, we shouldn't. I think this is not Hindus saying that we want to destroy all mosques and build temples in front of them. They're just saying that we want to reclaim a very, very, very important piece of our heritage. And like I said, the Shia Waqf Board has come out openly and said that land should be returned to Hindus so they can build a temple there.
Interesting. So you're saying that the Shias are okay with it?
Yeah.
Why is that?
It's always the Shias. They're the traitors.
Bloody Shias, man.
But the thing is, I think because they're a minority themselves, they maybe have a different view where they're like, we don't feel the need to maybe assert ourselves as strongly as maybe the Sunnis. Shias are like, whatever, we don't really care. Like, probably their heritage could have been destroyed also by the Sunnis. So they're like,
no, and even like I said, the Archaeological Survey of India, one of the archaeologists that excavated the site, he came out openly and he said that, look, we've clearly found remains of a temple underneath this old mosque, and this is something that's very near and dear to Hindus. I don't see what's wrong in returning this place to the Hindus so they can build a temple there. I think it'll help in building an incredible bridge between Hindus and Muslims. And if there is a small minority of people that are like, oh no, how dare you even remove one mosque and build one temple there? I think that's a little bit unreasonable.
Okay, fair enough. Now, one thing I want to talk about is I was watching one of your videos, Sham, which I found very interesting. Now, do you think forget Imran Khan for a second? Do you think Pakistan under Imran Khan has a policy of exporting terrorism, or is this something which he has inherited and is trying to combat?
Oh, this is something he's inherited, without a doubt. Without a doubt, this is something that it's not like Imran Khan came into power and he said, Pakistani army idhar aao, kuch kaam karte hai. I don't think that happened
rather,
at all.
Do you think he sincerely is interested in fighting it, or is he just leaving it to his own devices and whatever happens?
I don't know fully, but I do think he's most likely under intense pressure from certain segments within his party and within the army to not throw much of a spanner in the works, even though Haris says that he wants to. And I'm inclined to agree with Haris. I'll give Haris the benefit of the doubt there that maybe Imran Khan genuinely wants to change Pakistani policy in that sense. But I do think that he's most likely under intense pressure from certain vested interests within the Pakistani establishment. And so whether or not Imran Khan is going to be able to combat it, or whether Imran Khan just says, you know what, all right, whatever, that remains to be seen. I'm not horrendously optimistic, but I'll be very happy to be surprised.
Okay, and before I let Haris come in, do you think? I mean, a lot of people say, a lot of critics of Pakistan say that it's a failed state or it's a terrorist state. Firstly, is there a difference between the two, and do you believe that to be the case, or is it a state that is fighting terrorism within, and that does often leak out sometimes into neighboring countries? Is it defined by that, or is it a problem that is battling with that? If that makes sense.
Right. Like, well, you have countries like Iran, Saudi Arabia, Qatar that are not necessarily failed countries, but they're also countries that fund extremism, across the globe. So that's one aspect of it. I think Pakistan as a state has struggled. I don't know if it's necessarily a failed state, but I think it's a state that has definitely struggled. But And I think that what has happened with Pakistan, as you can see with its activities in India, as you can see with its activities in Afghanistan and the support that it's given to the Haqqani Network and the Taliban, there was a great report by the European Foundation for South Asian Studies that said that Pakistan has spent an inordinate amount of money in setting up a terror network in Nepal to try and destabilize that region. Now, again, it's a very in-depth report. I would recommend people to go check that out. And then you have Iran recently, a couple of days ago, that came out and said that Pakistan needs to control terrorist elements within it, or we'll have to do something about it. I think what happened was recently, I think there's been a few incidents where some members of the Revolutionary Guard were killed by extremists that Iran claims came from Pakistan. So it does give you an indication of where the priorities of at least some within the establishment lie, when there's a nation which does not have a lot of resources or money to spend, but is open to spending in such a crazy amount of resources on supporting or harboring terror elements. Now, this is happening not just to India, this is happening to other countries around India. So it's not like India is dreaming about this stuff. So that's the issue here, right? That, okay, there's a nation with little money, little resources, but they're opting to spend a large amount of their resources on this. Now, how is that the right way to go? From Pakistan's point of view, it's an interesting strategy because it allows you to stay relevant in the sense that you're saying, look, I'm the only one, dude, that can stabilize this region. You want to stabilize this region, you align with me. You support me, you help me, you fund me, and you help me control these terrorists. So, I mean, that's, I think, the strategy that they've used. Now, is that a strategy that's sustainable? I don't think so, because we're already seeing the sort of walls closing in on Pakistan a little bit, at least from the international community. So how long that can go, I don't know. And that is why when Haris makes the point that maybe Imran Khan is trying to change tack, I see some reason in that, because Imran Khan's probably come in and realized that, we can't go on like this. So maybe we need to try something different. But, I think we still have a little ways to go before we see some tangible changes.
Okay. Haris, same question to you. When you hear these accusations or allegations or whatever you want to call it, Pakistan is a failed state, it's a terrorist state. What do you make of that?
I would say something along the lines of what Sham said. I don't think it's a failed state. It is a state which is in a bit of trouble with keeping up with its expenses. I mean, obviously, before this whole thing happened, the focus was on Pakistan getting aggressively closer towards defaulting, and Imran Khan was going notoriously by Indian meme makers with a begging bowl all around the world. Especially after he said that I would never ask other countries for money. I would rather commit suicide. And I mean, the kind of thing. This kind of, I've been studying Imran Khan for a very long time. And I pretty much know how he would be thinking. I could be maybe overstating my understanding of him. But when you actually study a person for a decent amount of time, you don't have to have met them, but you can actually tell what they would be saying. For example, I would be pretty fairly confident to say what Richard Dawkins, for example, would say on India and Pakistan conflict. I could make a pretty good guess. It's not a failed state, but it has been on the borderline ever since Musharraf left. When Musharraf left throughout Norths, Pakistan's economy, and a lot of people forget about that, was growing at the 8%, which was slightly more than India at that time. But again, it's a smaller country, smaller size, so it's probably easier to do that. But now, ever since these Democrats came in, the number has been floating around 3 and 4, and they've been losing more money. So it's been close to fail state, but I don't think it has fully failed. As far as the terrorist claim is concerned, the policy change, this is what I wanted to touch earlier. So in the 90s, mid to late 90s, even early Norths, until the parliament attack in the Kashmir in 2002, it was, or one, I think it was 2002. Until that point, Pakistan were full in, all hands on board, with supporting terror, cause as much problem as possible. 99 hours almost recruited as a jihadi to go inside Kashmir. That, no doubt about that. And then the same thing happened when this happened, and there was another nuclear standoff like this. It lasted longer than this time. There were million forces on Indian-Pakistan border. Musharraf made exactly the same threats as Imran Khan made just now, that this could be a nuclear flashpoint, and then it fizzled out. But I think at that point, Pakistan kind of changed its policy a little bit. I was reading an old statement which wasn't actually made public earlier, but it was made public, I think, when Musharraf resigned, that when September 11 happened and the United States wanted to go hard at these Mujahideens, Musharraf wanted to make sure that that the United States does not see the Mujahideens' activities inside Kashmir as the same form of terror as it sees the ones of Taliban and other Mujahideen in Afghanistan. And George Bush assured him that no, we recognize that as a freedom struggle rather than. Obviously, Musharraf's kite was flying high at that time, and he managed to get what it wanted. And there was no immediate pressure on Pakistan from at least United States. And if United States is on board, then you don't have to worry about India or any other country. But that policy changed again. So Pakistan at that point devised a policy that are good Mujahideens and they're bad Mujahideens. The bad ones are the ones that are actually fighting against America and they're fighting against Pakistan, etc. But the good ones are the ones that are actually killing the Indians or operating in Kashmir. Those are the good guys. These are our assets. Now that policy started changing when Zardari came to power and when the Mumbai happened. And then again, Pakistan realized that, hang on, this is just cool. And there were some international people happened to die too. This wasn't in Kashmir. This was in one of the busiest cities in the world, one of the financial capital of India. And rightfully so, India was quite angry. And then the policy changed again that, okay, we have to maybe not do it. But again, there was hardcore military generals were still supporting that. So the official policy might have been different. So it was still kind of like, okay, sweep it under the carpet kind of thing. And India is quite right that when it says that nothing happened. But mind you, after that, Hafiz Saeed was detained. He actually lived very close to my house in Lahore, and I've seen that house, a very tiny house, and there's strong military. Some people say maybe the military is giving him some sort of a protection, but it is also at the same time, it's like his own prison. And so Hafiz Saeed, there was some action was taken against Hafiz Saeed, but again, not enough. And now another key thing happened was in 2014 when these homegrown, our own Taliban, our own assets actually turned against Pakistan, because a lot of other things happened too. North Waziristan conflict and the South Waziristan, and Pakistan was actually kind of curbing down on these terrorists. This is where the good Taliban, the good Mujahideen and the bad Mujahideen kind of got confused. And when they went after the army's children, this was an army public school. It wasn't just a normal school. It was an army public school, and 110 kids were brutally murdered. The teacher was burnt alive, and all types of horrible things happened there. And that's when it was decided that, okay, this is it. We're not going to support them anymore. And they still have a problem with Masood Azhar and there's so many others. Hafiz Saeed. Now, Pakistan has a dilemma. What do we do with these people? We can't kill them. We can't hand them over to India. That's never going to happen because these have been Pakistan's assets. They know everything. Which general supported them, which prime minister even had a meeting with them. So they would never hand them over to India. That just defies common sense. The other thing is, what do we do with them? Do we put them on a trial? If they do put them on a trial, they have been put on trial, show trial before, and nothing happened, and the case was pretty fucked up. Really, the prosecution didn't do much. It was all an eyewash. It was all bullshit. It was all. No sane person can actually admit that the Pakistani government or establishment was genuinely interested in putting these men to justice. Because what justice would that be? Because if Pakistani state was complicit in that, who else should go with him to the gallows? And that's why now Pakistan is in a dilemma when the Indian government demands them, okay, to be handed over. That's not going to happen. To be shut down or shot or killed or whatever, that's not going to happen either.
Why not?
Because that's going to antagonize.
Yeah.
Because that's going to antagonize thousands of supporters they have, because that is going to have another wave of those terrorist attacks that Pakistan lived through 2006, 2007 onwards until 2013, 14.
And Haris, that's happening with like, the sort of Taliban leadership and the Haqqani network as well, because the US is now saying, hand us that leadership, because that's the leadership that has taken hundreds of American soldiers' lives. What to do about that? Because it's like it's pressure from two sides now, and it's Pakistan's hesitation to do much about anything on either side. You know what I mean?
I think it's again whose muscle is bigger actually matters here. If they have been dodging United States for such a long time, then what hope do you think India has?
Sorry, that's not what I was saying. What I was saying that the reason they are in Pakistan, they can't just be in Pakistan and live in Pakistan if the Pakistani establishment or people within the Pakistani establishment don't know where they are.
No, they know where they are.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is like, they're like, India is fine, whatever. India is an enemy. The United States is a supposed ally, and
but it's a problem. It's just throwing a rock at a beehive. I mean, what's going to happen with you? They've gone through that on the pressure from United States to go after the bad Talibans in Waziristan, South Waziristan. We saw the fallout of that. 70,000 Pakistanis killed. I think over 300 bomb blasts in various crowded places. So many people died. In Lahore, it happened so many times. The little place where I grew up for a very short amount of time, for 5 years, in Iqbal town, and I knew some people there. I knew one of the person got killed. I mean, this is a country of 200 million people, and if you can find some common thread, I mean, how many people realistically would die in a terrorist attack? Next to nothing. But that number was so large that even I found a connection with that. If they're going to do that now, they should be prepared for another wave of that. But India wants answers. America wants answers and results.
And how?
They're not going to do it publicly.
Quick question, just to interject. Sorry. How do the Pakistani people, do you think? Because again, this is not a rhetorical question, because I genuinely want to know, because what we've seen is that since the walls have started to close in on Pakistan a little bit, one of the things that we've noticed is Pakistan becoming a lot closer with China. And what we've seen is China putting in an insane amount of money into Pakistan to build infrastructure and ports and stuff like that. They're building a dam between Kashmir and China. So this is a nation that, whatever you want to say about India and how it treats its minority, it doesn't even compare to what China does. How do you think the Pakistani people reconcile that sort of closeness with China?
With denial. I was flabbergasted when I saw some of the comments what they're doing with the Uyghur Muslims in China. They're blaming India, basically. They said these are fabricated Indian news stories. I'm like, fuck, come on. It's a totally, you don't realize how it happens. I mean, I would think that this is some sort of a Stalinist state when it comes to Pakistan treating itself, its own citizens, when it comes to China. They play songs, the Milli songs, the anthem between India and Pak, Chin, Dosti, Zindabad, those kind of things, right? So people are brainwashed into it. I was growing up, and I also used to think, well, India can't do us anything. Our big brother China will come and help us. Well, these are very simplistic, childish kind of views. But this is how majority of Pakistanis think, and I think this is denial. The Turkish, when Imran Khan went to the Turkish on a Turkish visit, the Turkish journalist actually asked him the same question. He said, "What do you think about this?" And to be, I was actually thinking, "Oh, this is a very boxed-in question. How is he going to get out of that?" And he's pretty clever. You got to admit that. So he asked her, "How do you justify that Uyghur Muslims? You tell India that you are killing Muslims, and Muslim wives, Gujarat riots, and all the treat, which is, as I said, I genuinely believe most of it is exaggerated and not at least state-sponsored. The people are idiots on both sides, so that they can break laws. And so, how do you deal with that when it happens to China?" And he said very cleverly, he said, "Well, I don't know if it's happening, but if it is happening, then Chinese are different. They don't like to do like us or the Western world, like everything's on media." He said, "I would speak to them in private." And I said, "What is going on?" That's what he said. This is what he said on the actual Turkish national television. And I must admit, that was a very clever answer. that he didn't condone it, that what China is doing is right, but at the same time he didn't want to antagonize China and say, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? We just put in $40 billion in your country. And so going back to the terrorist activities, that China has also put pressure on Pakistan, because now China has a dog in this fight. They have a lot of money in. They invested in China, in Pakistan, and it wants a stable Pakistan, because China is solely interested in this economic
But on
growth.
top of that, don't you think that China wants a stable Pakistan, but China doesn't necessarily want a stable South Asia, because it's in China's interest to keep the US busy in Afghanistan. It's in China's interest to keep the US busy in Iraq and Syria, and it's in China's interest to keep India busy in Kashmir.
Yeah, but
China grows and everybody else stumbles.
No, well, I don't know.
I mean, you look at the way China behaves in Australia. I mean, no. You look at the way China behaves in Australia and New Zealand, and what China's, especially, like, I'm not that familiar with Australia, but in New Zealand, it's pretty bad. Like the way China is trying to like occupy New Zealand economically, and it's done the same thing to Sri Lanka. What it's doing to Pakistan right now, it's done the same thing to countries like Kenya and smaller African countries in Africa. What it's doing to Pakistan, and I don't think that's a good thing for Pakistan. The reason why I was telling you about that, how do Pakistanis reconcile, is because they see, like you said, denial. That they see that China is treating Muslims a certain way, but they can deny it and move on because it helps the economy. Can they not do that with the United States, you think? Can they not be like, yeah, let's hand over the terrorists to them?
But
the US will help us.
No, but US and Pakistan have a history which is 7 years long, and they've seen these ups and downs where US has showered them with dollars, and then they have just pulled out and they said, "Fuck you, deal with your own shit." So that's a different one. And this is why they always use Pakistan, India, all-weather friendship, and there hasn't been any decline in Pakistan and China relationship at any stage, and so this is why they would always see China more favorably than they would see United States. China, again, when you say about the owning them economically, and the same problem happened in Australia as well. There were a lot of spy attacks on the government emails as well, and there have been massive farms the size of England being bought by Chinese
bought, like 3 years ago, China bought the largest, by a country mile, the largest farms in New Zealand as well.
Yeah, but this is in Australia, it's the size of UK. I think not only this thing, it's absolutely huge, and I was surprised to find there were only 300 cows in that entire big region. But
those are the happiest cows on the planet.
Oh no, it gets pretty hot up there. I'm talking about the outback. But it's this is how big Australia is. Look, I mean, I think any economic power would do that. The biggest concern here that was raised was the fact that, okay, if China is owning these farms in Australia is a very rich country when it comes to agriculture. But even in terms of agriculture, they don't have any other technological industry, but they're very good on raw materials and on agriculture. And they were saying, well, China is 1 billion plus people. They're owning these farms and they're going to grow food here. They would obviously be sending food to China first, and we might be starving. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but that was. No,
I'll tell you what happened with. Do you know what happened with New Zealand? New Zealand's biggest company is this company called Fonterra. It's far and away the biggest company in New Zealand. Even the number 2 company is a lot smaller than Fonterra. Fonterra is a dairy company, and Fonterra sends 85% of its produce, 85%, to China. Now, what China has done? What's that?
But is it excessive? I mean, obviously, if they're producing, I mean, if they're meeting their domestic need, then of course they can export it.
Yeah. No, I know, but the problem now happens is that now the New Zealand dairy industry and Fonterra, as a result of that, is very reliant upon China as a market. What they have done is they have not explored a diverse market very well. Now, what China is doing, like I just told you, China is buying up all these massive farms across New Zealand. and they're attempting to become self-sufficient in milk production by 2025. Now, what happens to freaking Fonterra? Fonterra is too big to fail. If Fonterra fails, the New Zealand economy fails.
I hope New Zealand economy is a bit more diverse than that. But just coming back to that, so I think any economic power would do that where Western countries like Australia, it is a bit of a worry. Though, what happens when China does take over countries like economically, like they've grabbed you by the throat, basically.
Yeah.
They've grabbed Pakistan, Sri Lanka, all the Central Asian countries. I was watching a documentary on this, the whole Belt Initiative that goes all the way to Europe through Central Asia. And obviously China comes in and they employ their own people first, and then the local, and that's the pecking order, right? That's how the food chain works. Yep. I think it's going to be very interesting how far we go and which way it's going to go. I mean, would Pakistan? I know one thing about Muslims: they never take someone's superiority over them easily. They just don't. And China is busy over and I think this Uyghur experiment is going to be very interesting how they actually manage that. I am not that the lives of obviously millions of people are at stake. We don't know to what extent that is happening. That's how secretive Stalinist state China can act like when it comes to suppressing a minority. But Russia couldn't handle Chechnya. Chechnya is even more radicalized than some parts of. I was listening to some comparisons that it's definitely more radicalized than Sharia law in Saudi Arabia. How the Uyghurs, I don't know what kind of social mindset they have, but I don't know. Sorry, I don't have the answer. I don't know which way it's going to go.
Sure, guys. I want to ask a few more questions.
Sure.
From a PR point of view, who do you think came out better off, Khan or Modi?
God, I hate that question so much.
Okay, so Harris
so much.
So Harris has said.
Okay, I'll go first. I'll go first. I think
go ahead.
I've been going after Sham, and I think I've been taking unfair advantage.
Okay,
Sham.
Sham, I want you to do a.
Goddamn Indians.
Yeah, Sham, this is your chance to do a surgical strike on Harris now. Harris, go first. Come on.
Go ahead, mate.
Okay, so Imran. So I genuinely think Imran Khan came out slightly better. He looked like this white knight who came with the white flag that I'm the preacher of peace, which genuinely probably does want it. He wants to focus on the economy of Pakistan. The other big plus point is there's not much at stake for Imran Khan. His popularity has gone through the roof. And all these problems, the economic problems, the begging bowl problems that he was facing before this whole thing happened, people have forgotten about it. And his ratings have gone through the roof. He's already a prime minister for the next 5 years, so he's going to have at least next 6-7 months of his honeymoon period has basically been renewed ever since he came to power. So I think it has worked for him. He didn't have much to lose other than losing a country if we went to a nuclear war. But other than that, I think he came out all right. But your Modi ji, on the other hand, he's got elections coming up. A lot of people I've been watching different views from different people. A lot of Congress people are saying different things, and a lot of BJP people are saying different things. It'd be very interesting to see the polls leading up to these Indian elections. How much this whole saga has dented Modi ji, how much it has benefited him. So I think it remains to be seen. I think it's interesting. But they're good. A lot of people are actually saying that it might have affected him negatively because people are questioning these Balakot things, and now the people who have smelt blood, they want to say blood. So they want to know that you have actually fucked Pakistan up or not. And now there's so much doubt, and I don't know.
I'm sure Imran Khan gained in popularity in Pakistan, but I think the realities around the situation of Pakistan, I don't think has changed drastically. I don't think countries and the FATF is now realizing, oh wow, hang on, Imran Khan's just a nice guy, let's give him money. I don't think that's necessarily changed. I don't think that will in the near future anytime. There was a recent report by Oxford University, they came out with it, I think, just a little while ago, called the Global Terror Threat Indicate, that said that, the Pakistani establishment poses 3 times the threat to humanity than Syria. So that hasn't changed yet. And look, that report might completely be overblown, but that's what the report said. I read the report a couple of days ago, and I found it interesting. So
I would like to read that too.
So it's called the Global Terror Threat Indicate by Oxford University. Now, so again, I'm sure Imran Khan shot up in popularity in Pakistan, but I don't think the ground realities have changed necessarily. With Modi, I do think Modi gets a little shot in the arm before the elections, because he's like, I can retaliate if I'm attacked, and people tend to like that. People tend to like that, not just in India. People tend to like that across the globe. Everywhere people tend to like that if somebody hits you, you can hit them back. So it's going to give him a little boost in elections. But I just don't like this question, who gained the PR upper hand, because the ground realities have not changed. No matter what social media says, the ground realities are fairly similar to what they were before the attacks. The only thing that has changed is these respective leaders have gone up in the estimation of their own people a little bit, but I don't think much has changed from the policy perspective.
So I read some very, very quickly. I want to make a comment on that. I think we have to revisit that position. A lot of people say, well, this is not just directed at you, Sham, but I read a journalist, I can't remember who it was. I think it was a very famous Indian journalist. I can't remember her name, because I started tweeting, following a lot on Twitter. She said, well, this is not as this is the real world is not in social media, and the people, something along the same line that you said. I think the real world has shifted to social media. I mean, if you're getting millions of people, I mean, in an organized poll, you get a few thousand people, a few thousand participants, like the proper Pew poll or whatever. But now you have access to, you're looking at millions of people. Yes, sure, your opinion can be shaped because you're hanging around a certain type of demographics, a certain type of people. So you might only be seeing the things that you tend to like. But if there are millions of people who are saying one thing and another million of people saying something, that is a pretty good indicator of how things are working. So I think we shouldn't really shoot down.
I know, but at the same time, social media said Hillary Clinton was going to win by a landslide.
I was just going to say that.
I don't know how
much
going to say that. We can take social, because social media does a very good job of pushing people into these echo chambers, and then they just bounce off each other, and sometimes that might not reflect ground realities, because you have a Trump supporter or a Modi supporter that might scream on social media ki eat se eat baja denge. Then he goes to talk to a Pakistani and he says, "Arey bhai, eat se eat nahi bajana chahte, we want a solution." So ground realities can always be different.
So so can I ask, Imran Khan for Nobel Peace Prize? Come on, I've been hearing a lot of people mention this. What do you think?
No, this freaking Kashmiri guy came out and said Imran Khan for Nobel Peace Prize. मैंने कहा भाई थोड़ा मेरी तरफ भी बढ़ाओ.
You know what? No, hang on. But hang on.
Come on, Horace, come on.
Adolf Hitler was given a Nobel Peace Prize. A lot of people don't know that.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was on the cover of Time magazine too that year, and Obama got a freaking Nobel Peace Prize.
What did he do? What did he?
Nothing. He bombed the shit out of Syria. That's what he did.
Yeah, exactly.
But the funny thing is, he actually got it before he even swore into office.
Yeah.
So fucked up with George W. Bush. Then they said, give him, but just get rid of George.
Or give Trump the Peace Prize just for getting elected.
And to be fair, and I can see why people of Pakistan are actually just jumping out of their skin to actually say this. Hey, give Nobel Peace Prize to Imran Khan. He's done nothing really. But I think they're so overwhelmingly happy that now we have a leader that they actually are kind of liking him. So don't get me wrong, there are a lot of people who hate him in Pakistan, but I've seen a lot of voices are changing. But again, what do I know? I'm only following. I'm getting accused on social media.
Okay, guys, what I want to do, I want to take some quick comments from the comment section or questions. So please keep your answers brief.
Very short.
I'm going to give it maybe like a minute or minute and a half maximum, and then we'll move on to something else. First comment is saying, Haris, stop making excuses for Pakistan.
Yeah, I know. I mean, okay, I've got a minute and a half to respond. Look, I mean, a lot. Let me guess. Is he an Indian person?
Yes, he says Indian American. Yeah. Sham, is that you, Sham?
Damn it! God damn it! I was so slick when I was typing. I didn't think anybody would see it.
The name
my
of the channel is Indian American, so it must be Sham.
God damn it!
He's the only Indian person in America, so there you go.
Yeah, there's only one.
There's only one.
Look, I understand a lot of people were actually disappointed by my stance on this whole India-Pakistan conflict. I see nationalism as a very, very surface, basic, primitive, emotional. I wrote a piece on tribalism, and I see nationalism as a part of tribalism. And I have learned to detach my emotions with my country is great or my country this and that. But I kind of realized maybe I haven't detached myself as much as I would have liked to believe. I don't think I'm making excuses for Pakistan, to be fair. I have acknowledged every single point where Pakistan is wrong, whether it comes to terrorism, the supporting to terrorism, and where they're heading now. What a major problem I have is with supporting the narrative of some jingoistic Indians that bomb the shit out of Pakistan. I would never support that, whether it's Pakistan or even if it's some random country anywhere else. I would never support that.
Yep.
Second thing is,
sorry, go on.
Okay.
Quickly, very quickly.
Yeah, no,
1.5 minutes, man. God.
Yeah, I know. Very quickly, very quickly.
No, I think I'm done. I think I'm
No,
done.
I'm kidding. Go ahead.
I'm just against. I am just against war. I would never support the conflict against anyone, and I genuinely believe that only dialogue and peace talk and civilized discussions can actually solve problems. So I'm not making excuses.
Fantastic. Okay, so I don't know if I've read this. I can't find it now, but it's something about Pakistan needs to be broken up. Sham, do you agree with that?
Well, what I agree with is de-Islamization of Pakistan. As long as Pakistan exists as this, like I said, I'm with Haris in making Pakistan a secular democracy. That's the way to go. And this nation was created on the basis of one principle, that we are Muslims, we cannot coexist with the kuffars, and we have to thus make a separate country for ourselves. As long as that ideology exists in Pakistan, I'm very doubtful that we're going to know peace anytime soon. So I think a de-Islamization and a secularization of Pakistan is very important. I don't know what that entails. Does that entail, Pakistan getting divided? I don't know. I'm not a foreign policy expert. I don't know. Does that entail? What's that?
No, go on. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was saying, but you're saying it so casually, as if it's not a big deal at all, because you just don't give a fuck about it. Like here you are talking about the legitimate Kashmiri separatist problem, but not showing the same concern that with this. Not only the fact that
that's why
Pakistan,
I said that I don't know what it entails. That's exactly what I said. I didn't say that I don't give a shit either way. I said I don't know.
Yeah, but sorry, maybe I got it wrong, because the way you said it.
I said, does it involve the whole of Pakistan becoming a secular democracy? I don't know. Does this mean Pakistan being divided into different parts? I don't know. I don't know what it entails. I don't know how that thing will pan out.
Okay, well, but I think the only solution, you are right, that I think the secular democracy is the only way, and I think people are starting to realize that. Again, like with when this person made the Pakistan's most popular political parties, the information minister made these comments about Hindus. They're only 2% or something, and they all supported the decision to sack him. I think it's a good decision. Now, and I think these kind of things should change Pakistanis gradually. People like me, there's so many other. I was actually looking at a lot of actually ex-Muslim atheists are actually Pakistanis. A lot of them, Muhammad Saeed.
That's what I said in a recent video as well. That it's important to support secular voices and ex-Muslim voices in Pakistan, because if Pakistan has any hope to become a secular democracy, it's going to go via that route.
Yeah, and I genuinely believe, despite of the fact that I may never be able to go to Pakistan, I still hope for a better Pakistan. I don't want the destruction of Pakistan. And people see that as I'm making excuses for it, then so be it.
Okay, so the next point, Haris is very popular in the comment section, I must say. The question is...
Sorry? I'm probably getting abused.
No, it's all love. It's all love.
okay.
It's all love. Do the human rights of Kashmiri Pandits matter? Does Haris Sultan understand that holding a plebiscite after a genocide would only be rewarding Kashmiri Muslims for committing genocide? I don't know if it's...
No,
Okay.
I think I understood. I think I understood better. But look, I was sympathetic towards that claim. Obviously, genocide of no one should ever be allowed, and people should be put behind bars, and whether that's the military or militants. I was looking into this Kashmiri Pandit saga, but someone did send me, and I share as I shared this the graph earlier, the official census results. I have a feeling. Please don't kill me, or hate me, or abuse me. I have a feeling that maybe these claims are a little bit more exaggerated, just the same way these claims are exaggerated by Pakistan. How much it happened, the overall demographics that I've looked at haven't really changed much. They might have happened on a very limited scale in Kashmir Valley and the Jammu sector, but overall population have not really changed much. That's just me. I'm going to definitely look more into it.
Sure. Okay. Now there's a question about Balochistan. The same way you could say Pakistan is agitating in Kashmir, is India agitating in Balochistan? Who wants to go first? I'm going to get Haris go first, because then Sham can.
Surgical strike.
So surgical
strike. Well, India did do a surgical strike. I mean, Pakistan did capture an Indian agent, and I wasn't somewhat surprised, but I was somewhat aware. I somewhat celebrated the fact that neither of the two parties are holier than thou, basically.
But with regards to Balochistan,
that's what I'm saying. That's why he was caught.
The interesting thing about that guy getting caught as well is that, number one, Pakistan has not offered any evidence to India on the matter. It keeps offering evidence to the International Court of Justice.
Yes.
And the International Court of Justice, there's an article here in the Financial Express, said that the dossier that was sent to the International Court of Justice provides barely any evidence linking Kulbhushan Jadhav with terror organizations in Balochistan. So,
look, fair enough. Look. No. Let me finish my point. I mean,
sure.
The fact that it's an international criminal court, International Court of Justice, I have that policy, and trust me, a lot of Indians and Pakistanis should apply it to themselves, and it might help them a little bit. I am not taking any official side of Pakistan's narrative or Indian narrative. Let's just see what International Court of Justice says. Right now, if that is true, that Kulbhushan Jadhav was captured, it does, on surface, it does seem a little bit weird to me that Pakistan managed to kidnap Kulbhushan Jadhav from Iranian territory, and Iran never made a fuss about the Pakistani kidnappers entered Iran. Iran, let me tell you, Iran is not a friendly country to Pakistan. It's like a very cold kind of silence from both countries, because Pakistan is on Saudi Arabia camp and Iran hates Saudi Arabia. So I don't, and as you see, as soon as this Indian thing happened, Iran came out as well, and they said they attacked Pakistan, diplomatically attacked Pakistan for doing something funny in their territory as well. So I think on surface it seems very strange that Kulbhushan Jadhav was not captured from Balochistan, but from Iran. And having said that, if he was captured from Balochistan, what the fuck was he doing there? I mean, Balochistan, even Pakistanis don't go there.
Yeah, but the case that I'm trying to make is that this is not a equivalence. I think this is a false equivalence, because we're saying that Pakistan's policy of promoting terror across South Asia, and one Indian person getting caught in Balochistan are basically the same thing. Dono ek tarah se nange hain. That's not the same thing.
Sorry, that's not what I meant. I actually, you know, when I was telling you about my mom argument, that was actually the core of the argument. She said the same thing. Because it's become fashionable. When we say that, okay, your media is horrible, then an Indian says, yeah, dono ke media ek jaise, which I know that I take reservation. Pakistan media is actually a lot more subtle, and I hope any sane person would watch it and agree with it. But the same point can't be made. Pakistan can't make the same point as with terror, because I told my mom, how many people have we there's no evidence. Yeah, they were saying, yeah, there was an attack on Army Air Force base in 2012 or something. And some people are saying Kulbhushan Jadhav has confessed that he was involved in that. Fuck that. I don't believe that. And I don't think the terror scale is comparable by any stretch of imagination. It's just not. Whether India might have been involved in some sort of activity is possible, but how much, I don't think it's on the same scale.
Okay.
So I wouldn't make the equivalence claim there.
Okay, cool. Sham, if you haven't got a response, I'll go from the question. Is
Yeah,
that right?
go ahead, mate.
Okay, so we hear this a lot from the Indian side, and I'm not saying rightly or wrongly. I'm just saying we hear this sometimes. This sort of fear about Ghazwa-e-Hind. Will this happen again? Right? We're going with nice, easy questions now. Ghazwa-e-Hind. But then when I speak to some
Listen, guys, we're trying to solve world peace here, so please, no easy questions. Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Ghazwa-e-Hind.
But then I also hear like sometimes people. I don't know if this is true. I don't read into this, so you can whatever you can correct me if I'm wrong. That some more extreme elements of BJP or the Hindu right want a Akhand Bharat. They want a united India. So these two sort of philosophies or versions of, or rather visions of South Asia, Akhand Bharat versus Ghazwa-e-Hind, which one is more likely to happen, or are they both just nonsense right now? I know previously it happened, but right now, going forward, is one.
Look, right now the whole concept of Ghazwa-e-Hind, I think it's more of some Muslims or some Muslim organizations believe it, but it's hard for me to say that, oh yeah, the whole Pakistani nation is just standing. Chalo shuru karte hain. You know, I don't think that's happening. I think India is in a position where that's not possible anymore. So yeah, that's a nice thing to say on Twitter to get people riled up, get a few retweets. But I don't think in reality that's something that's feasible. Secondly, the whole Akhand Bharat thing is another thing, because Indians, there's some Hindus that long kiya, we used to have this huge nation, and a lot of it, I think, the confusion that some people have when some people say Akhand Bharat, a lot of people think that they mean that Akhand Bharat means ethnically cleanse the Muslims, fill Pakistan with Hindus. That makes Akhand Bharat. That's not what they mean in a lot of cases. A lot of cases they mean Akhand Bharat means that India, Pakistan being one nation or something like that, with not excluding Muslims. Because believe it or not, this in India, people still see Pakistanis as Indians, as their own people. Like they still say, "Ye to apne log hain yaar, theek hai." A lot of people still say that. So even when they say Akhand Bharat, they mean it like that. And there's some people that said in the future, if relationships improve, we can even have like an EU like an EU like structure in South Asia. I'm not opposed to that. That's an interesting idea.
I think trade between the two countries. I think
like an EU-like structure where there's free movement and there's free trade. And this is not just India and Pakistan. This is numerous countries within South Asia. That's not a horrible idea, I don't think.
I think it's fantastic. Haris, any comments on that, or should we go to the next one?
I want to make a comment, and I'm minding a minute and a half, or maybe 2 minutes. First of all, I just want to say that people, the Ghazwa-e-Hind I've seen from people being that word being thrown around by some Indians is the same way that the word taqiya is thrown around by those far right-wing activists in the West. I think it is overplayed. The Ghazwa-e-Hind people, as I agree with Sham, that people in Pakistan, most of them haven't even heard of it. Just like taqiya, most Muslims have never heard of the word taqiya, but it's just thrown around. You're doing a taqiya, you're a Muslim, and I think some people just use that to just rile up some sentiments of fear.
Can I say that the first time I even heard the term Ghazwa-e-Hind was by Tariq Fatah, like literally like last year.
That guy is an absolute clown. Just don't listen to him. Don't pay any attention to him. I know a lot of Indians love him, but I was watching when Imran Khan came to power, and I somehow stumbled across this video. But he the claim, Sham. Let me ask you a question first. So then I would ask you another question. How do you feel about Tariq Fatah? How do you feel about Tariq Fatah? What do you think? What kind of a person is? Just a very short answer. Yeah, good person, bad person, crazy, whatever.
I think he says some good things, but I think he has a tendency to go overboard.
Okay. Well, now here's the extreme example of overboard. Now, I thought, okay, well, this guy seems like an educated person. He's a scholar. He's read a lot of books, and he's written a few books too. Maybe I think I never read it though. Here's what: Are you guys ready?
Let's go for it.
I've been trying to say it for a long time, but I actually never get an opportunity to say it. And I've made a tweet. This guy said he was making case against Imran Khan. He was saying this Mullah Khan, the sex maniac, whatever he calls him. Fine. He said, here's a lot of this inside information. He said on the Indian TV,
Oh my God.
he said on the Indian TV that, you know what? Imran Khan is, he even army Pakistan. Let me try. I'm trying to speak like him or whatever.
Go on.
Pakistan army put him in the cricket team in the 70s. Pakistan army put him. This is a YouTube clip, and he said they were preparing him to come to become a Pakistan prime minister 40 years later.
Amazing.
That is his words. He actually said it. That he said and he went on. He said he wasn't even a good cricket player. He was put in the army. He became a cricket player because the army put him in the cricket team. That's what he said. Now, I'll leave it up to you guys whether you want to believe whether he was a good cricket player or not, or whether Pakistan army was that far-sighted that 40 years ago they put in a cricket player. Yeah, they put a cricket player 40 years ago. So one day he would become a prime minister of Pakistan. They were preparing him.
If only they put that was planning in their own country, you know.
Yeah. I'll leave it to you guys. And as far as
he makes the same mistake that I think a lot of people that criticize Islam make, and a lot of Hindus make the same mistake. Is there a lot of anti-Islam polemic, unfortunately, in India, in my opinion, gets focused on Muslims rather than Islam. That's completely ass backwards. Muslims are people. Muslims are my people. Muslims of India and Pakistan are my people. Same simple as that. But Islam is a foreign ideology that is not of this part of the world. And so
even
I will.
If he was this part of the world. Even if you was,
that's what I'm saying. You're
right.
right there, Tho. My problem is with the ideology. My problem is not with Muslims. I was just talking to Abdullah Samir in the morning, and I told him, I grew up with Muslims. I lived in Bihar. I grew up with Muslims. There's a crap ton of Muslims in India, if people haven't noticed. I grew up with a lot of Muslims. I went to school with a lot of Muslims. I played football with Muslims. I drank with a lot of Muslims. We just did not tell their parents, but we did it. But so Muslims are just people, man. They're people. We don't throw the machine out if there's something wrong in the OS. We try to fix the OS. Smashing the machine isn't going to help anyone.
And very quickly, sorry, I know we've gone overboard with this question, but you talked about the Confederate and EU like kind of union something, and I've been saying it before that if you really want to put pressure on Pakistan, put the economic pressure hurts the countries more. This is what United States does. United States doesn't really put it economically bullies smaller countries, even European countries now. It's doing it. India has an upper hand in economy. It's a rising economy. If Pakistan, India had an economy size of, let's say, $20 billion, and if Pakistan was aware of that if I antagonize India, I'm going to lose this big chunk of money coming in, they would automatically do something about it. But if you
that's genuinely going to happen. I believe that's genuinely going to happen once once India becomes a middle income country. Once India becomes a middle-income country, once India is a lot more sure of its economic growth and its economic performance and its economic status, I do believe that's going to happen. And it's already happened a little bit after the strike, where India removed Pakistan from the most favored nation status. They levied a very heavy, I think, tariffs of certain goods, which made an incredible clip of that journalist going "Tauba tauba, tomato ke daam badha diye."
Was that? All right, was that for that? Okay.
Taba, Hindustan ne tomato ke daam badha diye and all that. So they're already taking some steps. But I think in a few years, when India is a lot more sure of its economic status, that's going to happen more. I do believe that.
So, Sham, this is a criticism for you.
What?
Yes, believe it or not, there are people who.
What kind of sham are you running, man?
Exactly. So the comment is saying, Sham is wrong. Muslims are the problem. Sham is wrong. Muslims are the problem.
No, I don't agree with that. Islam is the problem. Muslims are not the problem. Muslims are people.
But I mean,
I always like to say.
Let me play.
Sure. Go ahead.
Let me play the far
let
right.
Waleed speak, man. It's his show.
Yeah. Let me play the Akhand Bharat guy.
Yeah.
I'm gonna play the Akhand Bharat guy. Sham, you're not extreme enough for me. Okay, you want to appeal liberal. Okay, you're Congress and BJP clothing. Okay,
damn it.
Right.
Should have worn my my saffron headgear. Wore this dumbass Arsenal cap of a team that gets its ass whooped in France. Anyway,
that's it.
That's a different topic.
So you mentioned earlier before that wherever the Muslims are in India, whether it's Kashmir, whether it's Kerala, or whether it's in other places, when they start to gain a majority, or at least a sizable minority, let's say, influential numbers, then they start to say, you know what, we don't want to partake in your elections, or we want our own state, we want our own democracy, exclusive Muslim communities, or whatever you want to call it. And it's not only Kashmir, because we see it in Kerala as well. Muslims, I don't know what the stats are, but I think 15-20%, but
Yeah.
the number
Yeah.
they could increase as well as a proportion of the Indian population. They are a ticking time bomb, and you can intellectualize it as much as you want by saying Islam, Islam. But at the end of the day, Islam lives within the minds of Muslims and their actions. So Muslims are a problem. There, now you deal with that.
No, you're saying that they're a ticking time bomb, but I think they're a ticking time bomb because of Islam. They're not a ticking time bomb because they're Muslims, or they exist as people. It's like there's a sizable Tibetan population in India. The Tibetan government in exile operates in India, so there's a very sizable Tibetan population in India, in northern India, in Dharamshala. Is where the capital of the Tibetan government in exile is in India. So there's a huge number of people there.
That's where the most scenic cricket ground is as well.
What's that?
There's the world's most scenic cricket ground there as well.
Oh yeah, that's right, Dharamshala. So you don't see Tibetans there being like, no, we don't want to participate in India. We want our own nation called Dharma Nation or whatever. I don't know. We want something like this. Then there's a decent chunk of Parsis, or the old Iranians, the Zoroastrians that live in India, that found shelter in India after they were removed from Iran. They live in India. They've never said, we want our own country. We don't want to live with these Hindus anymore. There are very small number, but there are Jews in India. They've never said, we want our own country.
That's why he's saying Muslims are the problem. That's why he's saying.
Yeah, I know. But what I'm saying is, these are all people, and these are people often from the same area of the planet. So essentially, the people are the same. What is the differentiating factor among all of those people? And why is only one group of people? You can call them Muslims, but it's genuinely the idea that draws them to it. That they go to these madrasas and they're taught by their teachers, nahi, Hinduon ke saath rehna bilkul theek nahi hai. Alag rehna zaruri hai. So it's not, they don't come out of the point that I'm making, ki maa ke pet se nikal ke nahi aate jihad chillate hue. That's what I'm saying. They don't come out of the mother's womb saying ki nahi, Hinduon ka khatma zaruri hai. They are conditioned that way. They are taught that way, either by parents, either by religious teachers, whatever. So I think that's where the problem is, because these people, as people, they're fine. It's just that how they're conditioned and how they're brought up and what they're taught is what changes them.
So, Harish, before you jump in,
and I will.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Just before you jump in, Sham, when you were saying that you are from Bihar, there's loads of Muslims in Bihar. When your friends, your people in the neighborhood, did you get a sense that they were like cool in India, or they want something different? They may not saying it right now, but maybe even in an abstract sense, they were like, yeah, chalo je theek hai, lekin humko alag chahiye, humko kuch aur chahiye. Like, we want something a bit different. Was there ever that sense?
One of my friends had that sense, but there's another one of my friend that still to this day said that Muslims are much better off in India than anywhere else in South Asia, and he openly says that, and I'd agree with that. And there was this other guy who, and that's the point that I'm trying to make. I had a very good friend in middle school. We used to go football practice together. He was a great football player, and we used to go play together. We were very close friends. We used to hang out after practice every day. And this one day, I went to go visit him at his house, and I said, "Where is this guy?" And they sent me upstairs, and he was sitting there with some teacher. He said, "He's taking Quran classes right now, so come tomorrow." And then slowly, steadily, I saw that guy change a little bit. And he started saying like weird things about India. And I'm like, who in India has ever been bad to you, mate? Like, who in India has ever been like, all I've ever been is friendly to you. Like, what do you think is the problem with me? And he's like, no, Maulvi Saab said this. And he wasn't like antagonistic towards me, but he kept saying stuff like, oh, Maulvi Saab said this and this and this and this and this. And so again, this guy was just a guy. He was born in a Muslim family, but it's just a guy. but he got indoctrinated a little bit. I'm not saying he became a terrorist, but he got indoctrinated, and that's what happens, and that's what we need to fight. We need to fight the ideology, because as a person, that guy was a golden human being.
Sure. Okay. Horace, was
Well-
something you wanted to say?
Yeah, well, I agree with everything that Sham said, and I just want to extend that on that the Muslims are the problem. It is somewhat true that Muslims are the problem as long as they have Islam in their head. Islam is only going to survive. It's like the virus is only going to survive as long as the host survives. And but there is a cure for that. A lot of people forget that there's a lot of people are changing. And okay, you might say, I quote the statistics, and there's an Australian woman who was just laughing at me for saying that there's a growing community of atheists in Pakistan, for example. I said 2%. Whoa, 2%. All right, we're scared of the fucking 2%. Fair enough. 2% is a very small. But I looked at it as 4 million people. That's more than the population of 100 smallest countries of the world. How many countries there are in the world? Whatever. So 100 countries. The more.
But do you think that 2% is probably underreported? Because I'm guessing there's probably more.
Look, I don't know. Some say it might be overreported. It was done by Gallup. It was done in 2015. The funny thing is, the good part is, in 2005.
I'd agree with Waleed.
I think there's way more.
If that's the case, then atheists are the second biggest denomination in Pakistan, and I'm happy to own them. But the point is, it was 1% in 2005. That's 100% increase. A lot has to say. A lot of experts have been saying that social media is actually changing our minds the way we never could imagine.
Social media is going to accelerate it, yeah.
And it might accelerate it. Who is to say that in 10 years' time? And that's why I was sympathetic towards the idea that, okay, when India becomes a middle-income country and the Kashmir economic situation gets better, maybe the Kashmiris will change. And then they might not want the separatist movement. So give India a chance to ride it out, and Pakistan should hold on to its horses. And the point that you said that this is in the minds of Muslims, and the guy you were talking about, and I'll tell you, my household was so, and yes, it's true. The ideas actually fester in the minds of people, and they actually take over, and they completely change the people. And sometimes they don't even realize it, that how badly it has shaped their psyche around a certain idea. When I was growing up in Pakistan, we had a maid, and it's quite common, at least in Lahori culture, that the most maids are actually Christians, and there's a lot of derogatory words are used about them. They use the word chura for them, which is like a very disgusting word for someone. And these Christians tend to be darker in skin, and they're not higher up in the socioeconomic ladder. And I actually went to a cathedral high school. This is how bizarre it is for me now when I think about it. My teachers were all Christians. They were darker skinned than us, but they were educated, and they used to beat us up too if we didn't learn our lesson. So then some mind we had that, okay, these I didn't think about Christians as bad people, but when there was a maid in our house, we were still respectable. We never yelled or shouted at her, or we never treated her poorly. But now, and that's what we were told, that okay, well, you have to treat everyone equally. But then I looked at it that we had a separate cup for her, a separate plate for her.
Really?
And why is that? Yeah. And this is in our house, right? We were supposed to be the liberals. We were supposed to be the most tolerant, etc. And look, it happens. Muslims are not the only problem here, and I say it happens in India as well. We've seen in the movies. I don't know. You can tell me whether it's true or not. That Muslim
Bollywood is true.
Hindu plate.
Bollywood is true.
Of course.
But I see that. I'm actually not seeing it as an Hindus or Muslims. I'm actually seeing it as a virus that grows in the minds of people that is shaped by the society around them, and they just can't control it. And I had the problem with that, and then I looked at it. Okay, what is going on? I see that my teachers are Christians. They're fine. I have no problem with that. But this maid, why are we're treating her nicely as well, but we still in our mind think that she's inferior or dirtier than us, and that's why. I don't like to eat or drink from anyone's cup anyway, not even from my parents or my partner, unless it's washed. Of course, that doesn't mean I just smash my glass every time someone touches it.
I'm not coming to your house, mate.
Yeah, right.
Smash all the other cups and we'll all drink with one.
Right. So, but having said that, but why are we having this different standard for this darker skinned maid of ours, who just happens to be Christian? And I'm sure that might be happening in Sindh, where there's a higher population of Hindus, and they might have the same discriminatory attitude towards them. So when I came to Australia, my first housemate was an Indian from Bangalore, and I don't know if he was from Bangalore. I think he was from Bangalore. Do they speak a different language in Bangalore?
They speak Kannada, yeah. They speak Kannada.
So I couldn't communicate with him. The only way I could communicate was English, and I sat with him, and and I noticed, and I instantly realized, hang on, and he was not very hygienic. His nails were that long, and he wasn't very clean anyway. So, but I looked at it. Okay, we're having the same cups, and now I can't throw the cup, or I can't tell him to have a different cup, and then I had it. I drank from it again after washing it. I just don't. It's not on him. It's just on everyone. And I said, okay, nothing happened. He's another human like me. And that changed my entire horizon on that. And after that, I went to Pakistan again, and we had a maid again. And I told my mom, why do you have a different cup for her? And I tried to convince her, but it didn't work on her in a way. But as I said, she's not discriminatory in any other sense. She's not hateful, or she would not yell at them or anything. She's very kind. But this is my mother, like, right? She's grown up in a different era and different psyche, and even if they want to. But again, when she came to when she comes to Australia, she has a very good friend here. She's from Punjab. Her husband, they're Sikhs, I think. They go to each other's houses, eat from each other's plates, no problem. So I'm like, okay, what the fuck is going on? There's this problem in these people's minds. To some extent, it's been ingrained in their mind, and they just can't shake it off. And I think the same problem goes back to Muslim are the problems, as that person said. I totally agree that this is why you need to understand it's not the Muslims that are a problem, it's the actual Islam. And Islam can go away just like anything else. Just like my virus in my mind that I shouldn't share my cup with anyone, that went away. And big example, look at me. The whole Islam went out of my life, and it can happen to a lot of other people too. So my message to anyone who's a Muslim, Hindu, Christian, Indian, dark skin, brown skin, whatever, I would give you an experiment to do, and this will do you a world of favor. Just if you find another person or whatever, just try to drink from the cup. Don't have to drink it live from the cup. Maybe you can wash it afterwards and drink it from the cup and see what happens.
Please consult your doctor beforehand. Okay. So we've got a question here. Two quick questions. What do you think? Okay, no, I want to go with the other one first. Are you Sham? You have to explain this to me because I'm not sure what this means.
Okay.
I've lost it now. But it was saying. Oh, here we are. Sham, do you support India being a Hindu Rashtra? And do you think BJP or a certain element of it wants to go that way? Come on, Veedu Vidz, ask the question. Okay, what is a Hindu? What is a Hindu Rashtra?
A Rashtra basically means a nation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Rashtra means a Hindu nation, which it is. It just like Israel is a Jewish nation, just like that. India is a Hindu nation. India is the birthplace, or India is the place which survived the Hindu civilization, is how I like to put it. It is the cradle of the Hindu civilization. It is where this Hindu civilization has lived and survived for the longest time. And I consider India already a Hindu nation. That doesn't mean that India is not a secular democracy. That part needs to be outside of government, I believe. Sorry, go ahead. What were you saying?
So when you say Hindu nation, do you mean like historically speaking, or
historically, geographically, culturally? So this is something Kushal and I have talked about at length as well, Kushal Mehra, that when we use the word Hindu, we don't use the word Hindu in a religious sense. Or Hindus before the advent of the British never used the word Hindu in a religious sense. They used it in a cultural, civilizational, geographical sense. So in that sense, of course, India is a Hindu nation, and or like a Hindu civilization. I'm not as much a nationalist as a civilizationalist. I am in favor for my civilization surviving and prospering. The nation isn't as important to me as the civilization.
Interesting. And Haris, the question was, what do you think of Amr Liaquat and MQM?
Oh, the MQM. MQM stuck out as a sore thumb, and there's now a lot of people are not going to like it, and Sham probably would never even have heard of him. but there was evidence found which was shared with the British intelligence agency, which was initially given by the Scotland Yard, that there were some ties with the funding coming into MQM by some Indian sources. You don't want to accept it, fine. It's entirely up to you. I don't have any problem with that. But I do know that the states do get involved in dirty business. The only difference is the MQM was a different type of political party. The three mainstream Pakistani political parties, People's Party, Muslim League, the Nawaz's party, and Imran Khan's party, the PTI, none of them are actually militant parties. The two of them are extremely corrupt. Maybe the third one is to some extent, barring Imran Khan. But MKM was different, the fourth biggest party, and that was mainly in Karachi. And they were they were very militant. There was Bhattakhori on very normal there, and there's the Dons living there and all that. So there is a belief, and the army operated against him too, and he was shut down in 2015, I believe, or 16 maybe, when he just kind of went way too far in his criticism. And I think that's when they actually found some evidence of some Indian involvement, Indian funding into. He's based in London, just to remind you. He's not in Pakistan, so the funding was going to London and then maybe to Pakistan. That's what I think of him. I think he's a good riddance. Whether he was fully supported by India or not, or to some extent or not, I don't care. He was a militant and good riddance.
Okay, I have a quick question. And I want to ask both of you this. Like the three of us have talked about how de-Islamization is important. How do you guys see, being from a Pakistani background, Waleed not necessarily living in Pakistan, but how do you guys see that coming about? What would you recommend to happen from a Pakistani experience or a background to ensure that? Anyone who wants to take it first.
Go for it.
Okay. I see it as any other social upheaval or a social transition, like any other one, whether any other ideology being challenged, whether that's an economic ideology or a political ideology going from a monarchy to democracy or capitalism to communism, etc. There's always a threshold. There's always a little trigger point where it just becomes too much to ignore. And majority will always oppose you, but we also know that a majority either don't have the interest or the capacity to stand against it. This is how all revolutions have happened. Now, this doesn't have to be a revolution in a militant sense. It has to be a revolution in like the 70s liberation feminism revolution kind of thing. So it can be like that. If the number is true that it's 4 million people, 2% of Pakistani, that number grows again. This was again 2015, so we're halfway there. So the next one might happen in 2025, and that number might increase to 4%. That would mean 8 million people or something. That if that trajectory continues, there will be some sort of a pressure on Pakistan or Muslim world to actually do something.
Do you buy that argument sorry, just a quick question. Do you buy that argument that Sam Harris makes, that Sam Harris often says that, can we allow it to happen at its own pace, or do we need to do something to accelerate it because we live in a situation where extremists can now kill a much larger number of people in one go than ever before?
Do you
find any value in that argument?
But which position does he take? I can't remember.
He says that we need to accelerate the pace somehow, and he believes in accelerating the pace of that movement.
I think the pace is already accelerated with social media and all that kind of stuff. And I think honestly, I'm having spoken to some people in Pakistan, I'm not going to say who, but there are people who, they may not be atheists the way Harris is an atheist or the way I'm an atheist, but they're sort of thinking, you know what, this is all bollocks. They're just thinking, yaar, ye kya kar rahe hain? Ye kya bakwas hai? Look at the West. Look at the achievements they're doing. Look at the questions they're asking about going to the moon, about going here, about technology, about AI, and look at the questions that we are asking about: is this halal? Can I walk into a room with my right foot? Can I eat this with this hand? What if you look? And some people, there's a growing number of people that are disgruntled, and I'm telling you, like you were saying, Haris and both Sham, that once you get educated and once you go out to the bigger world, whether you go to Europe or Australia, and then you come back to Pakistan or even India, you realize, you know what, there's a massive world out there, and my little village or my little sort of neighborhood is nonsense. It's nonsense. And people have been, whether it's exposed through social media or through traveling, they've come back to their country. And I'm telling you, the next few generations, they may not be open about it, but they'll be much more secular and just they won't care about Islam the way that their parents or grandparents did. 100% they won't.
The best argument that I'll bring to this is just name me one civilization that stayed static throughout its existence. Just name me one civilization. The most common one we get is the Roman civilization that lasted almost 1,000 years, but they had so many different religious changes as well. You know, like post Constantine, it was like a Christian world all of a sudden, and there's no society that stays static. And if Muslims in the short, which is a very small window of 1,400 years, which seems a lot, 1,000 years plus, very short window in terms of civilizational.
Yeah, if you compare it to Judaism, Hinduism, and all the other isms.
Not even just that, but not even just that. If you actually look at the human civilization aspect, I mean, we've been cultivating for 10,000 years, and only 1,400 years it's been for Islam. If Muslims believe, and a lot of Muslims tell me that, okay, well, Islam is going to be here forever until the eternity, the Judgment Day. Okay, you want to believe in that? Fine, go believe in that. And maybe in your 70 years of life, when you die, Islam might still be as powerful as it is. But no one in their right frame of mind can tell me that in 1,000 years' time, Islam will be there just the way it is today. So my point was, and to answer the question, yes, I think the only way you can somehow speed it up is like by keep supporting us on our Patreon account. So we can keep making the videos and we can fast track the image. No, jokes aside, but
no. I don't think that's a joke. I genuinely don't think that's a joke. I think that's a very serious point. I think it's important to support voices like that in Pakistan, because the reason is because Kushal, for saying what he says about Indian culture, will not face any repercussions. Someone like Haris can't go back home. There's a massive difference there. So I think I think that's a seriously good point.
100%. And what I would say, what I would say is, you know, when, like Haris, you just said right now that, you know, if someone dies at the age of 70 and, you know, Islam is still, I think Muslims in terms of their population will grow or are growing, but Islam as an intellectual force has already exactly it's already on the decline. The young Muslims of today don't really care about Islam. If anything, it's an identity crisis. It's not an intellectual thing. This is what
that's a good point.
It's the identity crisis. It's not an intellectual thing.
That's a good point.
David Starkey, the British historian, said, for the last 500 years, there has not been anything published in Arabic that has been of any consequence. And I can tell you for the next 500 years, there won't be, if Islam stays the way it is. Okay, and Muslims may be increasing, but as an intellectual force, Islam, just like Christianity, has already been defeated.
Very quickly, I want to say that on the critical point, that the threshold that we reach, and as I said earlier, that most people, when they see violence, they somehow tend to reject it as a society, no matter how barbarians they are. When you see Taliban playing football with the heads of the soldiers, most people are actually cringing, and they don't want it to happen. The same thing happens in ISIS, and same thing in Pakistan. I mean, Mashal Khan was killed despite having said what he said. They wanted to deny that they wanted to believe in their heart that he probably wasn't blasphemous or whatever. But people tend to not accept violence the way some people, the leaders, do end up doing, like Taliban or ISIS or a hardcore Muslim, Islamist. The threshold will be reached at some point where Islam, as you said, will keep going on a decline, where even majority of Muslims will start saying, okay, I made a couple of posts about Pakistan and India. My stance was pretty clear. I got so many. Today, just in a matter of an hour, I received 175 requests from a Facebook friend request. Most of them are from Pakistanis this time. From Indians, and at least 10, 15 of them said to me, like along the lines, most messages were like, okay, why do you talk about Islam? Okay, well, all right, brother, peace, love to you, whatever. Like, whoa, you're not abusing me. You're not telling me. Again, it's a very small dynamic, right? But the point is, if they can open up to the idea, okay, he's not anti-Pakistan, he's anti-Islam for some reason, is that still acceptable to them? I think that's a great movement. And if it does get to that level, and if I stay intellectually honest with my views on Islam, and if I stay intellectually honest with my views on Pakistan, whether you agree with them or not, they need to see that, okay, well, there are people who can actually have these kind of views as well. We've been told that these are devils and these are cow piss drinkers, or actually, no, that's about Hindus. The atheists are baby eating.
Thanks, bro.
And hang on. The atheists are baby eating, and they sleep with their sisters and mothers, and all types of horrible things.
Yeah.
So if they see that that's not true, they might change. So there might be a threshold.
I think I want to wrap this up in maybe like another 5 minutes or 10 minutes, because we've been going on for so long. But I remember when Kushal first asked me, once you've left Islam, then what's left, like in terms of being a Pakistani?
Identity.
Yeah, and
it's
that
big on identity.
Yeah, and that really stumped me, because I'm like, oh, okay. I had no idea how to answer that question, and I think what you just said, Haris, that these guys are adding you on Facebook and they're Pakistanis, and they're saying we don't understand this anti-Islam thing, but at least he cares about Pakistan. That is a space which has not been explored, and hopefully, if you can have a say in that, that will be, I think, great for many Muslims out there who are either secular or agnostic or maybe ex-Muslims in Pakistan. They can still be Pakistani, they can still love their neighborhood, and they wave a flag when it comes to cricket. But at the same time, say, you know what, I despise the ideology of Islam, or I think we should see less and less of it in public life, or certainly in the government. That is an area which we need to explore and encourage. And if you're doing that, that's great. The only question I have to ask you, are you hated more by Hindus or Pakistanis? Who hates you more? Because you seem to be a very unifying figure in hate. I must very unifying.
I am bizarre. I mean, I don't think I can answer. Like, I get a lot of support from Indians, and I really, really, really appreciate it.
But you also trigger them as well. That's what I like about you. You sort of on one hand say I do, the next one Chapena.
No, I'm not like that at all. And I think this is why I am staying firm to my actual view, whatever I can think of, whatever I can arrive at rationally. And this is why I like Sham. A lot of people told me that, why are you talking to him? I have never, even in a previous discussion, I have not found him anything like a Hindutva or a crazy nationalist guy. So I don't mind that.
You passed the test.
God damn it! I should have said some more stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe now you're gonna get abused by your fans. And the Pakistanis, again, like they might like my stance on Pakistan, but they get flabbergasted by the fact that, oh, hang on. Pakistan is, in a Muslim's mind, in a Pakistani mind, you're a Muslim first and then you're Pakistan. And I think that's where, if we could shift that a little bit, maybe put Pakistani about...
How do you shift that? Like, what is a Pakistan without Islam?
I think normalizing...
I don't think it exists right now, honestly. I honestly don't think it exists right now.
Yeah, no, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Minorities coming to power, coming more into the limelight. There's a Hindu minister in Pakistan, in Imran Khan's party, Ramesh Kumar. He just goes on and he speaks as whatever he wants to say, exactly like anyone else, and no one ever brings it. I think if more of that happens, my heart just gets lifted whenever I see a Christian or a Pakistani. There was a Pakistani, a Hindu woman with the Rajasthani kind of clothes, and she stood up in elections or something. I don't know what happened after that, but I saw thousands and thousands of likes on that, and people are being proud. Hey, look, we treat our Hindus well. Whether that's true or not, but there's a yearning for people that want to do it. And I think international embarrassment that brings to them when we see the Kalashi women are forcefully converted to Islam, or when a minority Hindu woman is kidnapped and forced to Islam, it is embarrassing for Pakistanis. And most people would actually recognize that, and they would want to do something about it. People's Party, which is, I don't like that party, they actually have done a lot to protect Hindus. Obviously not enough. But they have historically stood up with them, and I think this is what needs to keep happening. And let's hope that if you can bring a more Pakistani in them, and at the same time get rid of or tone down the Islamism, then it might be a good thing.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. I think we should maybe end it there. I mean, I've taken a lot of your time.
Yeah, congratulations on solving the India-Pakistan problem,
guys. We've done it.
We've done it.
I think no, but just to recap on that, I think I mean, I can only imagine how it would be when the top diplomats from both sides are sitting on the table, and what kind of conversation would they be having? I mean, the points that Sham made and the points that I made, I think quite simple to understand. That what do we want eventually at the end? I don't know what the hidden agendas of the politicians are, but what do we want eventually is maybe there should be peace. Maybe there should be less violence.
Look, the thing is, there's far too many people on the Indian side that still maintain very firmly to this point that we're the same people, not necessarily the same country. They're at peace with that, but they've always believed that they're the same people, and a lot of that is why you see within the liberal community, particularly in India, that there's so much talk about aman ki asha and peace, because they say yaar ye apne hi bande hain, apne hi log hain, inse kis baat ki ladai, you know. So there's Islam that creates the wall between the two of us right now, but you know, for how long is the question.
There you go. There you go. I've someone saying you've only been going for 2 hours. Keep going.
Just go grab another pint and we're ready.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, we were actually going for 3 hours because for 1 hour before the stream went live, we were trying to set it up. So we've been going for 3 hours. You only see 2 hours of it. Okay, I'm not going to end on that note. Sham's alter ego, Indian American, is saying some nonsense stuff again. But I read a comment here saying, honestly, despite my...
Damn, dude, I thought that was a private message to you.
Yes. Yeah, you should be more careful.
Indian American is saying, I mean, I read somewhere, I think, I read one of his comments. I really want to quickly address that. He said something like, Harris was someone, is that what he said? Okay, well, I didn't read that part, but I just want to quickly address that Harris is someone who is against nationalism, sounds very nationalist. You know, well, obviously I can't speak to him, but Sham is, we ideologically, we differ quite a lot on certain stances. Sham, do you think, this is for my understanding as well, do you actually think that I am a bit of a nationalist? I mean, because I bring out so
Don't you think
problems.
you are? I think you are to an extent. I mean, you have a certain amount of
respect.
Okay.
Different. So I want to make a very clear distinction on that. Where a patriot is someone who just says that I have this country, I want it to survive, and I want it to last, and I love its people. That's just very basic, inclusive definition of patriotism. Nationalism goes a little bit further, where it says, okay, if I have to advance my interest, even at the cost or expense of some other country's expense, that's where we go. So it's like more firmness when it comes into the fact that my country is always right. I'm just you're more inclined to believe what your country's official narrative is, or you're more likely
to stand. Ask you, what does a patriot does to advance the interests of its country, of his country?
No, it doesn't do anything. It just recognizes the fact that this is my country. I want it to do well economically, whatever way, but it's not coming at a cost of anyone. Even though there might be a thin line somewhere, that where do you draw the line that, okay, wait, if India is sending, let's just say hypothetically speaking, if they are sending terrorists, should I send terrorists back too? A nationalist would say, yes, sure, go ahead, fuck them up too. And also another clear distinction that I've noticed between a nationalist and a patriot. A nationalist is someone, if you give them two pictures, they're likely to believe in the picture or the events that they want to believe, which paints their country in a good position, in a good light. They're likely to believe that one. Just like, for example, a lot of Indians in Pakistan were divided on the fact of what happened with Balakot. As a pure exercise for my own mind and to my own commitment to not being biased, I said I will wait for the international media. But Indian nationalists on this side, they were believing, yes, it wasn't the 2 trees, it was 300 terrorists killed. Pakistanis were like, fuck you, there were only 2 trees that were destroyed. So they were both believing the sides that they wanted to believe.
So I mean, that's a pretty massive margin of error. 2 trees and 200.
This is how nationalism works, right? It just kills your brain cells. They're absolute devoid of critical thinking, and I think that's where I draw a line. And I think it's fairly unfair for me to say, hey, I want best interests of Pakistan. I wanted Pakistan to do well. I wanted to become a secular country one day. I hope when I'm 80 years old, it's a better country and whatever. Than calling me a nationalist, because I don't buy everything that Pakistan says.
Okay, fair enough. So the comment I wanted to finish on, I don't know where the hell it's gone now. But they were saying, despite my disagreements with Harris, I'm glad we can have a conversation with him. And I think this is what it's all about, just having a conversation. At the end of the day, We're all the same. We all want what's best for each other and each other's countries. To be honest, and I think that's a great distinction between patriotism, and I think the most patriotic thing you can do is to criticize your own country when they mess up.
Exactly.
And
That's
if you don't do that, then you're blind. Then I don't care what religion, what race, what nationality you belong to. If you don't criticize your country when they're wrong, then you don't care about your own country. Because what is in the best interest of your country is that you criticize them when they mess up, not defend them and say, oh, okay, let's go, yeah, gung ho. So that's what I would say. Someone has said, Veedu, you are Kashmiri. Please give your opinion on this. Yes. Do we?
Hey,
listen.
After a 3-hour conversation,
remember your DNA test. That's all I'm going to say.
Yes,
remember your DNA test.
Yes,
and answer carefully.
No. Another important point here to note is Kashmiri, an Indian and a Pakistani, is trying to decide the future of a Kashmiri without listening to his say.
There you go.
That's what I'm going to say.
I'm going to vote. I want to vote. No. I'll be honest with you, man. Listen, maybe this is something which has been something I've been doing consciously, or I don't know. My family were originally Kashmiri, Asi Kashmiri, whatever. But no one speaks Kashmiri. We don't wear Kashmiri clothes. The only thing Kashmiri is the tea and our pale skin color. That is about it. We don't speak the language or anything. So I would actually identify myself more as a Punjabi because I was born in Lahore. I go to Lahore. My family are in Lahore. But yeah, we're Kashmiri, and I don't know what that means, if I'm being completely honest with you, because I don't really know anything about the culture or even the history. But that's the honest truth. I'm not going to force an opinion if I don't have one. People
I think that's fair.
People always say, "Oh, you're Kashmiri." Like, what? I'm like, yeah, but I don't know. I don't know anything about the history or the culture. So it would be ignorant for me to be like, yeah, I'm this side or that side.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, I'm just being honest. Man. But there you go. We've got actually one super chat saying, great show, guys. Need to do more shows like this, and we do a Zakir Naik accent before you end the stream. Man, I'm not sure I forgot the energy. but there you go. Ask them. Okay, this guy, this is the last question. I promise, guys, last question. Ask them, should Pakistan and India be united to secularism? I think what the question means is, should it be
kind of what we've been talking about, right?
Yeah. So I don't know if reading between the lines.
It's very unrealistic.
Sorry, go ahead, Haris.
I think it's very unrealistic, at least in the current climate. The most we can hope for is when the values, apart from religion, most values are quite similar, and most traditions are quite similar. And if we can somehow secularize Pakistan, then the most we can get is probably something like a European Union
like
kind
EU,
of thing.
Yeah. I think that's the best way.
That's the most we can get, because once you've reached that, once there's 100% peace between the people are flowing between each other, there's no problem, no military problem. There would still be politicians who would not want to lose their power. The prime minister would not want to say, "Hey, let me now become under the prime minister of India." So that's not going to happen. So that's my say on that.
I do think like in the future, again, this is obviously isko kehte hain na khayali pulao, but that's essentially kind of what we're doing a little bit. But at the same time, even ancient India, there was so the thing about ancient India was very interesting, because there was a very strong civilizational link between all parts of India, but there were still autonomous governments operating there, is what essentially the point that I was trying to make was that, we don't need India and Pakistan and Bangladesh and Afghanistan to be one country. We don't need that. We don't need that in this day and age anymore. I don't think so, at least, but I think what would be interesting is, because like Haris said, and like Waleed, I spoke to you before and you said as well, because the value systems and the culture are so very similar, that if we're living in a society where all of these countries have secular government and pretty much basically the same culture, then a sort of EU-like structure makes a lot more sense, I think, politically. And that might be something that could be realized more realistically, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think if you want unity in between the two countries, secure that unity through trade and playing Test cricket. And that's not a joke, because literally, when the two teams are playing cricket, that's usually when things are going well, and when they're not, that's not a good sign. So on that note, I think we should call it a day there. And guys, I want to say thank you once again. I honestly really enjoy these conversations when you two come on. It's a good, to and fro, friendly fire, surgical strikes, whatever,
Yeah.
But there you go.
Tree shut down.
Yeah. So between two trees and 200 people, you can decide what the damage has been. But there you go, guys. And I want to thank all the guys and gals for watching the live stream, for commenting, for the super chat. Really, really enjoyed it. And thank you for your patience as well. I know it took a bit of time to establish. Guys, literally last few words, and then we're going to call it a day. Who wants to go first? I don't know. Who wants to go first.
I'll just go ahead. That's been a tradition so far.
Come on, it was only once.
Okay, this is friendly fire. This is friendly fire. Okay.
I just want to say thanks a lot. I think this was a pretty decent stream. We had over 130 people watching at some point. I hope people actually think about the views that both of us have shared, and the certain things that are the golden rules that I want people to have is, like, first of all, believe that the truth is always in the middle, and don't buy your country's narrative, and don't buy you just don't buy your country's narrative 100%. Just don't. I've seen it. It's somehow become a fashion in the Indian mainstream that you even question the narrative of your government, or of your let's just say government. Then you are almost an anti-nationalist. There's a new term that is floating around in India. I think that's very dangerous. India should always take pride on the fact that it is a democracy, the world's largest democracy, and it's also a secular country. And let's keep it that way.
Yeah, and I'd say, look, I disagree slightly with Haris there, in terms of, like, I don't think it's been mainstreamed. Like I said, again, social media is not the real world. Yeah, people get a little hyper on social media. I understand that. I do it myself every now and then. But I do not believe that social media is an accurate representation of the real world. So yeah, I mean, what I would say, just to edit like what Haris says just a little bit, is that try and wait a little while before you form an opinion on social media.
Yeah.
All right. Wait 48 hours, wait for more news to come in, and then make your opinion. The problem happens that social media allows everybody to act like they're an expert. Everybody's an expert at everything on social media. So the problem is that even the biggest idiot thinks that he has a voice just equally as important as everybody else. Which is kind of what I do on YouTube, but still, that's a different conversation.
Yeah, which is all of us.
Yeah, but still, but yeah, basically, yeah, just think more, wait a little bit more, practice mindfulness, meditate, and take care of yourself. And at the end of the day, talk to people, work with people, because I think secularization and that process is good for Pakistan, is good for India, and is good for that whole area. And it's a high time that we found that, I think, that we let that sort of wall of Islamism, whatever you want to call it, keep dividing us, or nationalism, whatever, keep dividing us. It's important to try and find those common grounds, because Islam will come and go, but the people of that area will keep on.
And on the very, very, very final note.
There's more?
No. This is literally, I'm only saying this because for some reason, I find this really funny. Santosh is saying, Haris, please say, Mandir wahi banega before leaving. So, agar banega, to wahi banega. So Haris, please.
Mandir bilkul masjid ke saath banega.
Abhi masjid ki.
All right, guys. We're going to call it a day there, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for tuning in. And guys, thank you so much, Sham and Haris. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, pleasure,
we'll see
mate.
you guys next time.
Thank you.